in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
From Silicon Valley to Wall Street, the promise and perils of artificial intelligence are playing out on the world stage.
Sam Altman, the co-founder and ousted leader, will now return to OpenAI.
Meta, of course, it's unbelievable, up 22%, the biggest stock move by market cap ever.
NVIDIA, it surges as AI demand powers the company's outlook.
The industry is being transformed, not just ours. Fundamental transformations in computing affects every industry.
AI is the most profound opportunity in our lifetimes.
Everything from the capital being invested to the talent, data, and chips powering this AI revolution are in high demand.
The thing that's most exciting about this generation of AI is perhaps we move from autopilot to copilot.
But what will the next phase of adoption and monetization look like? Which big tech companies will dominate in AI? Which startups will disrupt them?
I would never count out the little startup.
And where do the risks and unintended consequences lie?
Why should we trust you?
You shouldn't.
The leading voices across global technology, business, research, and investing are here to help us decode the future. This is Bloomberg Tech.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Emily Chang and Brad Stone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bloomberg Tech. We are so excited to have you here in San Francisco.
Thank you all for coming. This is our one opportunity every year to get the people and companies we think are cool together on one stage and the people that we like, of course, in our networks to come and watch. So really appreciate you all for being here today.
We devoted last year's conference to AI and analyzing the massive implications brought about by the arrival of ChatGPT. And I have to say, Emily, the questions around AI, the hype has only gotten louder in the last year. And so this year we've got a great lineup of deep AI thinkers. We have the co-founders of Anthropic who are joining me soon. They're actually brother and sister. We have Fei-Fei Li, one of the godmothers of AI, a professor at Stanford, talking about where AI is right now and where it will take us. We have some of the earliest AI investors like Reid Hoffman and Vinod Khosla.
I've also been delving into AI, of course, on the second season of my show, The Circuit. We actually just dropped an episode with Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, last night, where we talked about confronting OpenAI and Microsoft, the future of search in the age of AI. So we're actually going to be showing that episode today around lunchtime.
And I'm talking to a robot.
Yeah, you're talking to a robot. Did we mention that?
I missed a meeting, and when I looked at the agenda, I was the idiot talking to the robot. So
it
I'm
might
doing
be
that.
a little awkward, but hopefully it's cool.
And we're bringing you an exclusive look at Bloomberg Business Week's One to Watch in Tech. It's a great list, and we have many of them here in attendance.
And we've also got some of the ones you already are watching. Of course, the CEO of Snap, Reddit, Gary Tan from Y Combinator, he's hard to miss. Adam Neumann of WeWork. It's really going to be a jam-packed show. We're launching a new vertical today, Bloomberg Space, where we're going to be covering, it's a new website, we're going to be covering all of the new business activity happening in outer space. And there's so many different places to network and interact while you're here. We're going to be doing an Elon Inc. Episode of our podcast. I think Brad's the victim for another victim. Another thing that you're victim to
emerges
today. So please make sure you mingle around and see all the stuff we have going on.
Before we get started, we do have a couple of announcements. First, we would like to acknowledge our presenting sponsor, Invesco QQQ, as well as our supporting sponsor, Okta.
And if you want to connect to Wi-Fi, I'm going to read this so I don't get it wrong. It's all the info is on your badges. We're going to be flashing a QR code somewhere throughout the day. Oh, there it is. And this is going to be your way to participate in all the polls that we have going on today. You can also submit questions for the speakers. We're going to do our best to get to those. We might not get to them all, but we'll try. And actually, I want to try doing our first poll now. So if you toggle back and forth between Q&A and polling, you'll find the poll. Here's the poll question. If you were founding, investing in, or looking to work at a company of the future, it would be focused on AI, quantum computing, biotech, space exploration, virtual or augmented reality. So please put your answers in so we can get accurate polling data.
I think I can guess what's going to come out on top. But while you're voting in the poll, you can follow with today's coverage and engage with us on social media on all the major platforms under the hashtag Bloomberg Tech. Our handle is @Bloomberg Live on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And if you have a Bloomberg terminal, look for today's conversations using the function Live Go.
Hang on, can I get a picture of the audience? All right, everyone, you have to look excited though, because it's a little. I'm feeling the energy's a little low. Oh yeah, okay. All right, let's do it. Okay, everyone, smile. Geez, look happy. Yay. Okay, one of just you. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Up, like clap, like yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see those results.
We got it. All right. Shocker.
Mm-hmm. And how would you have answered this?
I don't know. What do you think? I would have said AI.
I'm going to space.
Okay.
We're doing this conference on Mars next year.
I'll be watching.
All right, let's get the program started. Emily, we will see you in a bit.
Thank you.
Our first guests are siblings and co-founders of Anthropic, an AI research lab that combines machine learning, neuroscience, and cognitive science. Everyone, please join me in welcoming to the stage Dario and Daniela Amodei. All right, thank you guys. It's so exciting to have you here. I mean, first, perhaps for the uninitiated who may have heard about ChatGPT or the results that Google serves up in Google search results or Microsoft Copilot, tell us about Claude and how it's different from the wave of large language models or chatbots that have emerged over the last year.
Yeah, so if we go back to kind of the founding of Anthropic, right when a group of us left OpenAI to start Anthropic, we had two real theses. And one of those theses is something that I think is shared among the, 3, 4, 5 companies that have been very successful in this space, and one was very unique to Anthropic. The first one was, what's come to be called the scaling hypothesis, which is the idea that if you scale these models up a huge amount, then, you add more data, you add more compute and parameters to the model, they perform better and better on a wide range of tasks. We were early advocates of that, but, that I think is common to all of the companies. The second was that along with scaling these models up, making them like a very powerful rocket ship, you need to steer the rocket ship. And so we've worked on various things like constitutional AI, which is a method for explicitly specifying the values of an AI system, interpretability, which is looking inside an AI system, a bunch of things around AI security and resistance to jailbreaks. And so I really think of our work as the combination of the pure scaling up with this sort of steering and safety component.
I guess, let me ask you to answer that question too, because if you're going to distill it down for consumers who now can download a Claude iOS app, or enterprise users who have access to your APIs on Amazon's cloud or Google's cloud, but they have other options. So why Anthropic?
So really, I think there's a few reasons. The first is that today, Claude 3 Opus, which is our largest model, is the most powerful, capable AI model available anywhere in the world today. And so for businesses that are really looking to transform some of the work that they do, particularly highly complex cognitive tasks, Claude 3 Opus is a great choice. Another reason is we really provide enterprise choice and sort of business choice. And the reason that we do that is we heard this feedback from our customers. Sometimes you need really the kind of, the Ferrari, like the best sort of fastest, smartest model available. But sometimes you actually just need a model that is, cheaper, quicker. Claude 3 Haiku, which is our smallest model, is a great choice for businesses that are using an LLM for something like customer support, right? Something where you need a really, really fast model that is, price competitive. And I think more broadly, something we found is that businesses in particular, but also consumers, really vibe, I think, with our approach around trustworthiness and safety and reliability of these models. Ultimately, when you're using a tool like Claude for so many different facets of your work, you really have to feel confidence that what it's returning is something that is accurate, reliable, isn't going to go off script. And I think Anthropic has really been known for prioritizing that type of work.
Dario, chatbots, as we're experiencing them now as consumers, do you think that's a novelty, like the first demonstration of this novel technology? And does it go away? Does it sort of fade into the background of the tools that we end up using?
I think actually sort of both. So I think there's two directions the technology is going to take. I think one direction is that AI systems, potentially through APIs, and this is more the enterprise side of things, are going to start suffusing all of kind of our existing technological infrastructure in the world. So you can see the beginnings of it with kind of, integrating models into, for example, IDEs or code completion. You look at what Intuit has done with, kind of answering questions about TurboTax, extending products with AI systems and large language models. I think there's going to be a lot of that. A second thing that I think is going to happen is that the chatbot is also going to be extended by kind of reaching into a lot of the tools and being able to do things for you, right? This is the personal assistant that takes actions, that interacts with all the stack of existing technology for you. So I think both of those things will exist. They may correspond roughly to enterprise and consumer, or it may be a little bit more blurry than that. We, of course, are more focused on the enterprise, but really we deploy AI in every surface we can find.
I have a suspicion that next week at Google's event, Google I/O, and next month at Apple's event, WWDC, we're going to hear a lot from those companies about integrating AI into their software, into their operating systems. I'm curious, what kind of lane exists for the kind of third-party app, like the Claude app that you just introduced on iOS?
So I don't know. I think our general perspective is it takes a lot of effort and a lot of resources to build a model. And I think once having built that model, we want to deploy it on every possible surface that we can. And we find a lot of folks find it, useful to use the model on mobile just as they use it on web. One thing I would also hint at that we've kind of started to move towards is, we recently released a Teams product, and of course, that's going to be on mobile as well. And the direction we're going in that is towards a more enterprise direction. If we think of the current chatbots, when people try and deploy the current chatbots in an enterprise setting, it's a bit like I took a human off the street, a smart human, and then kind of asked them to work with a coworker at a particular company, right? They don't necessarily have all the context. So I think we're working in the direction of trying to make it more like an informed employee, hooking it up to databases, hooking it up to company-specific information, and I think the mobile app is going to be part of that in addition to having the consumer experience.
So you and your co-founders are known as the team that spun out of OpenAI to develop models that are aligned with humanity, that don't develop unforeseen risks, that are safe. How did you come to develop your kind of concerns about the potential direction of AI?
So I think something that has always been this founding principle for us is, we see an incredible amount of potential benefit from this technology, right? Something that Dario and I talk about a lot, together with the company, with our co-founders, is just the potential for this technology to transform sectors like healthcare, right? Or even science. I think some customers that have worked with us, Pfizer, the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, right? The type of work that they're doing is truly amazing, and we're proud to be able to support businesses like that. I also think we have felt very strongly that there are some lessons to be learned from kind of prior, technological waves or innovation. And this is not that, we're so incredibly prescient. We've just had several decades now of time to kind of look back on things like social media and say, wow, there was a lot of good that came out of this, but there were also a lot of harms that were kind of caused by this technology. Whether or not you could have anticipated those in advance, hard to say, but I think we are trying to be the most responsible actors that we can be. And think about what are the potential externalities that could be caused kind of accidentally by this tech. And we really try and take a very broad approach to how we think about that. Of course, we don't have all the answers. We try to be humble, but we've tried very, very hard to sort of think about what are the areas where something kind of could go wrong here, and how do we act as responsible, leaders in this space.
Dario, I don't know if you caught the introductory video before we came up on stage, but there was a little clip of Emily last year at this conference asking Sam Altman with kind of wonderful simplicity, why should we trust you? And after a beat, he goes, you shouldn't. And so I want to ask you the same question. Why should we trust you?
Yeah, I mean, my view has always been you shouldn't trust people, you should trust institutions. And I think my view is, on one hand, we've tried to build an institution and a reputation that's, trustworthy both in a societal sense and in a, companies can trust us with their data sense. I think in the end, the proof is just in the pudding, right? You have to develop a reputation of doing what you say and saying what you do. And, Anthropic hasn't been around for that long, but that's what we've tried to develop over time. I think there are broader societal questions about if the technology becomes truly powerful, to a level that, that we haven't seen in a century or so, then we start to ask questions about kind of democratic legitimacy. It's not so much about trust. It's about, is this so big that, there needs to be some democratic mandate and involvement of the government. I don't think we've reached those questions yet, but I suspect they're closer than we think. And then we should think about mechanisms of democratic accountability.
You guys have raised over $7 billion, in part from Amazon and Google, helping to accelerate this AI arms race. I guess I wonder, is the world safer now than it was 3 years ago before we started down this path?
I think something that is very kind of challenging about a field like AI is just, in some ways, the genie is out of the bottle, right? I think something that is, we think about a lot is how do we, in the kind of environment that we're in, right? In the circumstances that sort of everyone is experiencing where AI is taking off, right? How do we act as kind of the best, most responsible actors we can? And I think we have this sort of vision of not just, Anthropic and the decisions, we make impacting the technology we develop, but how can we put sort of positive pressure on the ecosystem, right? Something that we hear from our customers a lot, which we like to hear is, hey, we're choosing Anthropic, we're choosing Claude because of your commitment to, safety and security and reliability, because we also know that is what they're saying to our competitors, right? They're saying, hey, we don't feel confident that your models are as safe as Anthropic's. That's actually a great market signal, right? I think that there's a way in which we view our impact not just from the work that we do directly, but really from how we impact the market, policy, right? We try as much as possible to be very open about trends we're seeing so that policymakers can be informed about how to set thoughtful regulation in the AI industry.
I would add, we have this notion called the race to the top, right? So what you're referring to with, all these different players, you might call a race to the bottom, and I think that's real. But we often try to counteract that with a race to the top, which is we try to set a good example and get others to follow it. And in order to set that good example, we do have to have enough weight that others actually respond to our signal and get moved by our signal. An example of this is, we pioneered this concept of a responsible scaling plan. We put this out last September, and within a few months, OpenAI put out a similar thing. It really seemed to us that us putting ours out helped to spur the efforts by others. Now we've heard that Google is doing the same thing on podcasts, and I've heard similar, at least whisperings of other companies doing the same thing. I think in areas like interpretability, we developed the notion of constitutional AI, and I think just yesterday one of our competitors put out a concept very similar to it.
You guys clearly left OpenAI in part because of some concerns, right, about the direction of the company and whether your values were aligned. Are any of the fears that you had back then now being manifested by what you're seeing at OpenAI?
I think what I would say here is Anthropic really has always aimed to have, kind of our own vision and our own story, right? We saw this opportunity to go out and really build something where everybody was kind of aligned from the start about what our values were. We've always had this very strong kind of moral compass around wanting to develop these tools in a way that is, responsible and safe and reliable, right? All the words I've been using. And I think that it just sort of felt to us like this was the best way to do it, right? We had this opportunity to go off on our own and really sort of set this vision from day one.
That was a very civil response. Dario, is there anything that you want to add?
I mean, I don't know. I would just add the notion of trust. Like we have seven co-founders, like 3.5 years later, all of us are still at the company. We have an incredible amount of, trust for each other. We started this company because we believed that we all had the same values and we trusted each other.
I want to run a poll. What is the most urgent issue raised by AI? And you're going to have some options, so please weigh in. I would love to know what you all think. And while we wait for results, I feel like I have an opportunity here talking to you both, your brother and sister, on stage at the same time. Daniela, what is it like starting a company with your brother? I mean, if it was my brothers, we would, we'd be probably in court, or at least there'd be a struggle for control. So how are you guys managing to do it?
I think something that is a little unusual about us is Dario and I have always been really close. We grew up in San Francisco. It's like a fun fact about us. We actually grew up like 10 minutes away from here.
In the Mission.
In the Mission, that's right. And I think I don't know, Dario and I, it's just sort of hard to explain, right? Like folks who knew us when we were little to folks that, know us now, right, our co-founders, they've always kind of described this like very strong, special bond between us. And I think since we were really little kids, we always had this desire to like make things better. I mean, I know that sort of sounds like a little corny or basic, but it was a very deep thing. Like we really felt like the world, there's many problems in the world. We really want to try and help and make things go better. I think getting to do that together, like in a company that we lead, is the sort of fullest expression of form that we've been able to do. And I don't know, it's great.
I mean, maybe how I would encapsulate it is I remember when Daniela was in high school, and every week we'd play the original Final Fantasy VII on the original PlayStation in 1997 or something like that. And now we do the same thing every week. Playing the new remake on the PS5 with 30 years better graphics, and it's basically the same thing except we're running this company.
And was there anything about the circumstances of your upbringing or the family dynamic, do you think, that pushed you to become entrepreneurs?
I'm curious for Dario's answer too, but I think something I think about a lot is, I don't think we recognized it at the time, but growing up in SF in the 90s, we really saw the sort of first tech boom up close, right? We didn't have the language yet for sort of what was happening, and of course a lot was sort of going on down the peninsula, but I vividly remember walking around and sort of seeing all of these very well-dressed young people going into these kind of swanky office buildings and just thinking what do you do, right? Still kind of a mystery at this point, but I had a concept of what's a doctor, what's a lawyer, what's a teacher, and I think there was, at least for me, sort of this spark of who are these people? What do they work on? What is this? And that sort of just percolated in the background as we were going off and doing, Dario was obviously getting a PhD and I was working in, global health, but there was always sort of this backdrop of these young people walking around sort of having these cool jobs that I think there was something in there that stuck with me.
I was actually entirely uninterested in the first tech boom in the 90s. It all seemed really boring to me. I was interested in being, a scientist and inventing new theories of the universe. And, I thought of AI as kind of in that bucket. But, so I worked on neuroscience for a while, and then as I moved into AI, it kind of became increasingly interlinked with the tech world, and it became clear to me that if you wanted to actually make these issues of both scientific discovery and social responsibility real and bring them out into the world, the devil is in the details, and it would really come down to the details of the technology and how it's integrated into the economy, and that the only way you could really hope to influence that, or the best way you could hope to influence that, was actually by being involved in, running one of these companies.
I feel like there's more to explore here, but we're running out of time, and I want to get to 3 questions, so we have to kind of do 2 rapid fire. Considering the extraordinary expense and resources that have to go into training and operating these large language models, do you worry that it won't be feasible anymore to keep showing these step improvements in the way that we've historically been seeing them these past few years?
Yeah, so I think we have quite a ways up to go, right? The current generation of models that we're seeing out there is still in the $100 million range. I think all of this can scale to the $100 billion range at the end of that range with some difficulty in terms of power and chip provision, but we're gonna get there in a few years. So that's a factor of 1,000 more, and then I think the algorithms are gonna get more efficient, and we're gonna see some things on top of post-training. At some point, we're going to run out, but I think there's lots of things stacked on top of things to keep making models.
Do you guys worry about the carbon footprint of these models?
So something that we have invested in from early on at Anthropic is actually doing carbon offsets. Of course, it's a complicated issue. There's no perfect answer, but it is something that is top of mind for us and that we invest in.
The FTC is examining the relationship that companies like Anthropic have with the big tech companies like Google and Amazon. Is there an argument here that these relationships forestall competition?
So, I can only speak for Anthropic, but I think one of the things about us is we have relationships with 2 different cloud providers. And so, I can't go into the details, but in many cases, having those 2 different partnerships makes it, not plausible that, that various things could be exclusive, right? And so, I think that independence and that choice is one thing that I think differentiates Anthropic from some of these other deals.
Just to build on that, I know we're at time, but I really think, the sort of current state is that it is quite expensive to train these models, right? And so I expect we'll see similar structured deals, to come, but strongly agree with Dario. We're an independent company.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one quick question, and we'll leave you. Just considering that you're saying that we're going to continue to see the same pace of improvement, make the argument for us that we should be excited about this AI future instead of slightly fearful about it?
My honest answer is that you should be both at the same time. People have asked me, how excited or worried are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And I said I'm 10 out of 10 excited, and I'm 10 out of 10 worried as well. And so we try to handle both of it. But let's actually, I'll just discuss the positives for like 20 or 30 seconds, which is I think of biomedical, right? I go back to my work as a neuroscientist and computational biologist, and I really look at diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's. We're getting to this range of diseases that are super biologically complicated, and that humans are running up against their limits of what they can understand, right? What can fit in one person's understanding. And, I think the AI computational chemists, which we're already beginning to see the little bits of with, work we're doing with companies like Pfizer, I think there's a lot of potential there, and that field could be very surprised by how fast things go and, the real improvements in quality of life that come from it.
All right. Well, Dario and Daniela, Amodei, thank you guys.
Thank you for having us.
All right, moving right along. You almost certainly know our next guest. He was the founder and CEO of WeWork. He's now running a residential real estate company called Flow. He's trying to buy back his old company. I hope he won't mind me saying there's a slight resemblance to Jared Leto. Adam Neumann. Adam, thank you for joining us. It's awesome to see you.
Thank you for the Jared compliment.
Yes, that is a compliment.
Huge Oscar winner. Huge compliment.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about WeWork. It's in bankruptcy court. A New Jersey court recently gave it back to its creditors and essentially ignored your bid to buy it back. Is that the end of the story for you and WeWork?
So we're first of all, thank you for having me. And we're just at the middle of all of it right now. But just to explain a little bit more about it. Our bid was $650 million. The bid that seems to be the one that they're considering to confirm at the end of the month is $400 million. It's a difference of $250 million. The number is very important. I'll explain in a second why. When in bankruptcy, and I'm learning a lot about, I've never heard anything about it before, so it's all new. I didn't think bankruptcy was a beauty competition. I thought bankruptcy was.
That is a line in your brief.
Yeah, it is a line in the brief. I thought it was whoever is going to give the best offer. And when you base it, well, what is the other offer? What's the plan that they're showing? So they show a plan and they give numbers. And just to share a few numbers in the plan that's going to be presented to the judge at the end of the month, the plan says that the average, two numbers that are very easy to track, average revenue per member and occupancy. The two numbers that the current plan is forecasting would be the highest numbers we have seen since 2019, which is as far as we can go, which I would call peak office, and would hockey stick, and they would have to achieve those numbers by the end of this year. I'll say a little more. The profit margin of the buildings would have to go from 16% margin, which is the last number that we saw right before it declared bankruptcy, to 24%. That is 50% growth in margin by the end of this year.
And this is under your plan or
their plan?
Their plan.
No, their plan.
So you're saying it could be hyperbolic.
Oh, I'm saying it's definitely unfeasible.
But let me just ask you, I mean, don't the creditors have a legal requirement to take the best deal? So is there something, and you said it's not a popularity contest, so if it was, why, if they looked at your deal and perhaps had a legal requirement and a very self-interested requirement to take the best deal, why do you think that they have bypassed?
So we're getting very technical, but let's say one.
I don't think it's a technical question.
Well, it is, because your real question you're asking is the judge obligated to take the best deal, or does the judge get to choose what deal he's going to take? And I think it gets quite technical. But let's say something else, just about back to what I said. From 16% to 24%, 50% growth in 1 year. Without spending any money on on a business that now has aging buildings, in what I think is one of the worst office markets, maybe in the history, but definitely of the past 40 years. Look around just here in San Francisco, but it's a global phenomenon. If they achieve these very rosy plans that I think are unfeasible, they would then need to, in 2025, grow from that to not go cash flow negative. What I'm really telling you is that the plan that they're planning to approve, or if they approve, it hasn't happened, would be a plan that takes the company cash flow negative less than 12 months from when it came out of bankruptcy. And we're planning to show it in depositions. We have a chance at the confirmation, and you can take it as far as...
Okay, so this isn't over.
This is not over.
Well, we do love a redemption story in Silicon Valley. Of course, Steve Jobs famously went back to Apple. But what would you do with WeWork? And considering the obstacles it faces with the economy and work from home, what is your vision?
So I think the only reason we were even interested in WeWork is only because of flow. As flow is thinking.
Why don't you describe what flow is?
So flow, I'll just take it a little backwards. Are we going to go by that clock or by the clock?
You leave that to me.
Okay. Because I need to manage the questions, but the answers.
Roughly, yes.
Roughly, yes. Okay, so I'll give you the short version. Okay. Well, the very short version, when I moved to this country in 2002, I lived in an apartment building with 135 apartments. The first thing I noticed is what the neighbors weren't talking to each other. I had this great idea, why don't we create a company called Concept Living? And I was in CUNY University. I had 4 other students with me. We went to the entrepreneurship competition, and we didn't go to the next stage. I remember going to the dean. I said, Mr. Dean, I understand you can't reverse whatever happened, but why? Didn't we even go to the next stage? What a great idea to bring community into buildings. Would have increased the NOI, would have made people pay more rent. And he goes, Anna, an entrepreneur can't go and disrupt an industry of that size. The interesting lesson from that is, if you're right now an entrepreneur, if you're right now a dreamer, if you're right now a student, and you have something you really believe in, don't let anybody stop you. The worst case scenario is you will fail and you will learn great lessons that will then apply to the rest of your life. So that's one. Taking it 22 years forward to today, 70% of today's 40-year-old and younger in America are renters. They spend 34% of their total income on rent. Not only that, we live in a time where we're so connected digitally, and we just heard in the panel before how more connected we're going to be. We've never been more disconnected physically. There's loneliness, there's mental illnesses. Flow's vision is oneness between a person and themselves, their neighbors, and their world. We deliver that vision by building a vertically integrated company. We build our own tech. We manage our own buildings. We own our own buildings, and it's our own brand. Just to explain why that's so important, traditionally, landlords would be landlords, and they would use third-party providers to build the technology for that. Those third-party providers, because they're not the owners, would build what they thought was best. These third-party provider technology companies are based on accounting system. Flow has to rebuild the architecture to be able to base it on whatever we think is most important. And to deliver our mission, what's most important is actually the resident, the human being. By putting the resident first and building this very flexible architecture, we're able to do almost anything we want in the building. And I'll just give one example. Community commerce. Our residents, one of our buildings, Flow Fort Lauderdale, that's doing extremely well and is delivering on this promise, and the net operating income is up more than 30% since we took over, which in real estate terms is a very large number. Our residents all have services, not all, but a lot of them. One is a yoga teacher, one is an accountant, one is an insurance salesperson, average age about 32. And they want to rent, they want to give these services. They come to us. For now, we're putting it through 2 different things, but it's all getting integrated into the app. They say what their service is. Now you're another resident. You would like to buy or consume that service, and we connect you and put you together. From the moment you go to Flow, and you guys can check out Flow at flow.life. You go to the website, you want an apartment, says, do you want community? Do you like pets? Do you like wellness? If you like wellness, do you like meditating, or do you like lifting weights? And whatever the thing that you're going to say, that you chose to tell us, we're going to know about you. Then when the next event is going to happen, we're going to prompt you and offer it to you. And by doing these little things, you're allowed to really deliver on this mission. As an entrepreneur, I get the bug usually every day. I try to stop it every month. I'm looking at my CTO right now. He has to build a system that's ready to receive all these ideas. Without building the architecture the way we did, you would not be able to deliver on our promise and our mission.
When Andreessen Horowitz invested $350 million in this new idea, you could kind of hear the collective gasp from the tech press because they were betting on you after a quite public experience with WeWork. Why do you think they made that investment?
First of all, that's a question for Andreessen Horowitz. But, and I know Ben has spoken a little bit about it and said different things. Also something that not everybody knows, we also put in $350 million ourselves. So it was really done.
And you had some of these apartment buildings already.
I did, and we chose the best ones. The other ones we sold, we chose the best ones and contributed them to the company and created perfect alignment between us and Andreessen. But I happen to be coming back from a board meeting right now. We had one 2 days ago. And our board meetings are amazing. Mark is our board member. Ben joins the meetings. And we all sit around the table. We suggest we talk about whatever it is. And without getting into details, again, my CTO here had quite an experience. We presented everything we're doing. Everybody was so excited. And then we gave an idea of a new thing we want to do in 2025. And Mark and Ben, based on 30 years of experience and a lot of investing, didn't think it was a good idea. And the speed in which they communicated it, the strength in which they pushed back, and the conversation around the table was just something that I wasn't used to. It's the kind of partners that you need. These are not just tech investors, the best I think in the world. These are entrepreneurs who've built multiple businesses. And the mix, the combination of them with everything they do best, and the team and myself with everything we do best comes together. I think it's the right business at the right time.
Interesting. I'm also hearing sort of implicitly that maybe you didn't have that same kind of board relationship at WeWork, and that a little bit of friendly pushback is always a good thing.
So you're saying friendly pushback. The pushback is real. So it is friendly because we're partners and friends.
Yeah, there was Masayoshi-san and his colleagues doing the same thing at WeWork.
So I'll just one more thing about Mark and Ben. For those of you who know them, the pushback is real. It's not a soft pushback. It's a real pushback, and that's what I want as a partner. I'll give you one fact about my board from before. For 9 years, and it's in the board minutes, every single decision that was ever brought up in the board was unanimously a yes. Not one time in the record was there a no, until the time when I said I'm stepping down, and that was they voted. That was a yes also.
Let's bring it back to WeWork. So you've described the Flow mission, which is residential focused and community focused. So tell me where a co-working company in a challenged real estate market for that kind of office space, where you think it fits?
So the way I see the future of living, the future in post-corona world, I think we all understand this. And actually, we're sitting right here in San Francisco. It happened here and in New York almost more than anywhere else. The speed in which people started working remotely and successfully worked remotely was unbelievable, and I think surprised a lot of people. But we also learned after Corona that the home, for most of us, is the most important thing. The future of living and the future of work are intertwined. To think of one without thinking of the other would just not be solving the actual problem, and you wouldn't be able to deliver on the full mission. The only reason we were interested, and the only reason we are interested, is as part of Flow. So it was going to be an SPV below Flow. Flow is going to deliver the technology. That same flexible architecture doesn't work just for living. It works for office. It actually works for anything in real estate. And we had a group of extremely talented investors that were coming behind it. This was not Flow spending its equity on that. This was actually raised externally. And the hybrid of those two would be able to give a future WeWork a plan that's actually sustainable. The current plan, unfeasible.
Okay. Is there one even fraction of a kind of personal element for you, of a return, of a redemption?
We didn't speak about this question in advance.
It's
you can't say that something that you've spent so much time on, and I didn't just spend 10 years on WeWork. There is a team of over 10,000 people who gave their heart, body, and soul to build this. Of course, there's a lot of emotion. But part of what I learned, and I've learned a lot of things, but part of my biggest lesson, we as human beings tend, many of us, to take the past, wear the glasses of the past. We have a narrative, and we tell ourselves that narrative. And when we look at the present, we're looking at it with the narrative of the past. The problem with that is you're not actually in the present. The thing about the present that's so exciting, it never happened before. And if you don't come into it with a fresh set of eyes and are completely, you and I, we're right here, right now, nothing else matters. Unless we're doing it this way, you don't actually get to experience life. So is there emotion? Of course. Would I make this decision at all because of some comeback story? The reason I really didn't want to look at WeWork was because of that. And the only reason we started getting interested, the more we heard their story, the more we heard their numbers, we're like, they've never done this. They are wrong. And it is still, after everything, a big global brand. But so there is emotion, but I don't make decisions that way. And if I can share something with the audience, try to live the present like you're seeing it for the first time, because you are. And then you'll really be living life to its fullest.
I do enjoy how you bring these kind of quasi-spiritual mission statements into things. What, I don't know, I guess maybe...
I wouldn't call it a mission statement. I would just call it an observation. And again, I think all of us as human beings, we tend to do what's easiest. It's much easier to bring with you the past into the present. It's much scarier. It takes a lot more courage to just be here now.
One of the reasons why no one has ever built a national residential real estate brand is it's difficult, requires a ton of money, regulatory differences in every market, the details of maintaining, owning properties is not trivial. Why can you succeed in a spot where probably a lot of others have looked at it and decided, no, thank you? It's also a very incredibly volatile market.
So the other thing about this market, it's a market where, in the right locations, it's a market where supply is much smaller than demand. So because demand has always been greater than supply, the most successful landlords didn't need to build a brand. The buildings were full anyway. But going back to what I said before, the fact that 70% of this young population is spending a third of their income on it, they deserve a better solution. When they get a better solution, they're going to get a feeling. When they have that feeling, that's the beginning of a brand. Before we did this, without looking too much at the prism of the past, we did build an office brand in the second largest asset class, and it wasn't national, it was global. It faced a lot of the same challenges. I'll tell you an observation that we have. It is easier to bring community, bring people together in a residential building than it ever was in an office. Because in a residential building, it's nighttime, you went upstairs, you could stream your content, you could be on social, or maybe you actually want to go downstairs and see other people. In the past 3 months, we've hosted hundreds of events. 40% of all of our residents have attended the events, but the number I like more, 38% of our events were thrown by the residents. So we're really creating an environment where they can choose what they do and what they don't do, and people seem to choose again and again to want this face-to-face connection and not just the digital connection.
Are you being at all more careful in pitching Flow as a technology company? Because I recall it was one of the things that around WeWork, investors kind of rejected the idea that that was a technology company, tech play.
So in general, the way I live my life is I'm doing the things that myself and the team know are correct. I'm not building this for what investors are going to say. I'm building this to give an experience that I think I'm very well positioned, that the team is very well positioned to give. We've done it before, and we're going to do it much better this time. But back to the tech, you cannot deliver on this promise and our mission without doing the tech the way I said. What I explained about architecture is really important. If you have architecture based on accounting, you're just not going to be able to do things based on building community. In our architecture, you could. I'll give you another thought that maybe is not common. We have 160 employees. 51 of them are in tech, mainly engineers and a small group of product leaders and designers. So you cannot solve a big problem in today's world without it. But I don't need to label it this or that. Label it a real estate company. It's the largest asset class in the world. There is no brand. But our tech is what's going to help us deliver this problem.
Are you a different kind of CEO now than you were at WeWork? I mean, you did mention the different relationship with your board. How else have you evolved?
So I hope in many ways. Growth is a complicated thing. What I've learned is you can really think about how much you're growing. You can only test if you grow or not when you find yourself in the same situation. I think we all would like to be better, but then we get to that very stressful situation, we bounce right back to that old challenging self of ours. I believe I did, and there's many examples of things that change, but you already gave one. I have investors around the table that are not just comfortable pushing back, I think they like it. So it's we have a great relationship, and we're really building this together, which is one. But I think another one that a mutual friend of ours, or I'm not sure, he's actually not my friend, someone I know and someone that you know, gave me. He saw me speak in a conference, and he told me, Adam, can I give you a little bit of advice? And I said, of course. And he said, but I don't know you so well. Is it okay if I just jump to conclusions? And I said, please do. And he said, because he's I think, best CEO on the planet.
This is
Mr. Bezos?
Okay, Jeff Bezos.
Okay. Jeff Bezos. Okay, Jeff Bezos. And I didn't know him, and I was so happy that he wanted to give me any type of advice. So I said, please. And he said, he gave an example of another entrepreneur that he really respects, another great entrepreneur. He said, you know, there's two different versions to people. There's the version you are when you talk to the world, which is where you do what you do and what we're doing right now, and when, yes, there is a lot of clarity about where we're going. But he said, when someone with your personality is sitting in a meeting with your tech team, with your design team, with your ops team, and you're talking about a problem, if you're going to be the first one to say what you think, there is nothing you can do except affect everybody else and what their answer is going to be. Says, Adam, my advice to you, said, Adam, even if you don't take my advice, this is the biggest asset class in the world. It doesn't have tech. It doesn't have a brand. I think you're going to do really well.
So he told you to talk last in meetings.
He said, if you can help yourself and be the last person.
Can you help yourself?
So that would be a question for my team. I'm getting a thumbs up from the CEO. Okay. So I remind myself all the time, and when I don't, I take a moment, I take a deep breath, and I do it again. If I want to succeed in the way that I want to for all of us, but also to deliver on this mission, but also for all of our partners and all of our employees, I have to learn how to do that. I'm sure I'm doing it better. I'm sure there's a long way to go.
Okay, 2 more questions, and we'll try to go quick. One of the things that brought journalists like moths to the flame to the WeWork story podcast and the TV show, the books, was a kind of a narrative of excess, an excess of charisma, of camaraderie among employees, capital raise certainly. Do you think about that at all, or do you think differently about excess in the kind of company you're building?
So those are like 3 questions in 1 question in a short time. Let's do the capital raise. Just say 1 word about it. Our capital was raised from the smartest investors on the planet. We didn't have any grade B investors. We had the best of the best. We had Goldman, we had JP Morgan, we had Fidelity, I can give the list. The list goes on and on and on and on. So they're very smart people, and they choose to invest. Then SoftBank came in and yes, gave a very large investment, and we saw it in other places. But all of that is one. But the other thing I'll say with everything that has occurred since, the amount of ex-WeWork employees that have applied to Flow The amount of, and we are working, it's only 160 employees, so there's a small group that are in Flow. Most of the Flow employees are new. But the best of the best, most of them are with us. What I hear every single time, and Corona, remember that happened in 2019. Then Corona happened. Then everybody was alone at home. The amount of people who say that this is the best time they've ever had in their life, career-wise, you said friendship, partnership. We built, and I think it's important to remember, we changed the category. We built a global brand. We became, you used Jared Leto, television show. I can name all the different things that happened. We became part of pop culture. It's not obvious to build something of that magnitude and of that side. We said before, did we make mistakes? Of course. Could we have done things better? Always. But I am taking a lot of lessons from the past. But I don't for a second underestimate the level of achievement that was achieved, the team that did it, and you'll see, it's very hard to replicate.
Okay, last question. Change topics. You are from Israel. You attended or lived in a kibbutz only miles from where the October 7th attacks happened. I just feel it would be remiss if I didn't ask you, I think specifically what you're taking now from the protests that we're seeing around the world, particularly in the U.S. at college campuses.
Sorry, taking a second because this, yes, very different topic, very important topic. When it started, and I'm going to take Colombia as an example because I happen to know that you went to Colombia. When it started, I was extremely concerned. And what I do when I'm very concerned, I start asking questions. I don't ask just the friends that I know in Colombia whose kids are Jewish that are going there. I actually ask everybody else, from all religions, from all countries, from all states. We have a relationship with people all over the world, and not just people that are here, but people that are running countries. And I kept asking again and again. I said, well, what do you think? And the more I talked to them, the more they said, you know, Adam, what we really think? We think these protests, instead of helping achieve the voice that they're trying to have, they're actually hurting. The other thing they told me is, taking an example with Colombia, it ended up being a few hundred people that out of them maybe half weren't from there. And as we just spoke about, I've always been about bringing people together. I've always been about community. Of course, I agree and believe that we should have not just 2 opinions to every topic, but 5 opinions. But we should do it in a way that brings people together and brings people around the table for a discussion. We should not bring hate. We should not bring violence. And to touch on that a little more, when I think of those young students, young, I think, is the right word. And all of us, some of you are young right now, and all of us were young at some point. And I still like to feel young, but time is moving. And when you're young, you're just developing your opinion. We live in a world where we can find any support for any opinion we have, center, right, or left, no matter what. There's support for it, and you can find the biggest story and another million people thinking the same way you are. For these young students, I hope over time they'll develop their own voice. They'll find their own time to collect information. They'll get informed. They'll understand that when you look at something from the outside, you never know what's actually happening in the inside. And I really hope and wish that that will happen, and they have time. The professors, on the other hand, when I think of that, I'm extremely concerned.
We will leave it there. Adam Neumann, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Fei-Fei Li, Sequoia Professor in Computer Science and co-director of Human-Centered AI Institute at Stanford University, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Emily Chang.
AKA the godmother of artificial intelligence. How do you feel about that title?
That's the first question. You know, Emily, I would never call myself godmother of anything. But when I was given that title, I actually had to pause and think about it. And I was like, well, if men can be called the godfathers of things, women, so can women. So I accept it.
100%. I mean, you are one of the most influential computer scientists of our time. You have written hundreds and hundreds of papers. You were the creator of ImageNet, which laid the foundation for modern AI. which was basically this database of images and their descriptions. Did you have any idea how influential it would be?
ImageNet was conceived back in 2007 as probably the inflection idea for big data's role in AI algorithms. So from a scientific point of view, I had the conviction that big data would fundamentally change the way we do AI. But I don't think I could have dreamed that the convergence of big data, neural network, and GPUs essentially give the birth of modern AI, and I could not have dreamed the progress, the speed of progress since then.
You are in rooms with the people who are making decisions about the future of this technology. President Biden, Sam Altman, Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella. You are testifying before Congress. You are on task forces. What is your main message to the people who have the power about how they should use that power?
Great question, Emily. Honestly, the message is the same as I'm in the room of K-12 summer camps as well as Stanford, introduction to AI courses, is that recognize this technology, what it is, and how to use it in the most responsible and thoughtful way. Embrace it because it's a horizontal technology that is changing our civilization, is bringing goods, is going to, accelerate scientific discovery, help us to find cures for cancer, map out our biodiversity, discover new materials with us, but also recognize all the consequences and potentially unintended consequences and how to develop and deploy it responsibly. I just think that voice of balance, of thoughtfulness is so important in today's conversations, whether it's in the White House or on campus.
Right now, and I don't know if you would call this a crisis or an inflection point, but AI models are running out of data to train on. And then you've got companies turning to AI-generated data and synthetic data to train their models. How big a problem is this? What are the risks? What's the next step here?
So first of all, I think AI models are running out of data is a very narrow view. It is, I know that you're implicitly referring to these large language models that's ingesting internet data, especially data from, from websites, Reddits, Wikipedia, whatever you can get a handle of. Even when looking at language models, let's just stay in this narrow lane, I think there's so much more. We are seeing that differentiated data can be used to really build customized models, whether it's journalism as a business or in very different enterprise verticals. For example, healthcare. We're not running out of data. In fact, there are many, many industries that we are still have not even entered the digital age yet. We have not taken advantage of the data, whether it's healthcare or environment or education and all that. So even in the lane of language models, I don't think we're running out of data from that point of view. Do
you think using AI-generated data to train models now is a good thing? Or does that take us further and further from the original source in a dangerous way?
That's a so much more nuanced way question. It's a good question. So AI, there are many ways to generate data. For example, in my Stanford lab, we do a lot of robotic research, right? Robotic learning. There, simulated data is so important because we simply don't have enough resources or enough opportunities to collect human-generated movements and all that. And simulation is really, really important. Would that take us onto a dangerous path? I think even with human-generated data, we can go down a dangerous path. And simulation data, likewise, if we don't do it in a responsible way, if we don't do it in a thoughtful way, of course it might take us down a dangerous path. I mean, I don't need to even call it out. You know what are the bad human-generated data are there, right? Like entire dark web. And so the problem is not simulation itself. The problem is data.
You're getting into the hot and crowded AI startup game. You're starting something, reportedly. Can you tell us anything about it?
Nope.
Okay. Well, stay tuned. We also we conducted a poll about trust in the age of AI. Can we bring the results up of that poll? The question was, how much do you trust tech companies to develop AI safely and securely? I fully trust them, 0%. I'm skeptical, everyone, not at all, a significant portion of people.
Who are doing this?
The people in this room.
Oh,
the people in this room. Okay. If you had to rank the big AI players, who do you trust the most and who do you trust the least?
My trust is not placed on a single player. My trust is placed in the collective system we create together and in the collective institution we create together. So maybe that's your trap question, but I'm not going to be able to call out anybody that I feel is, I mean, think about the founding fathers of the United States. They did not place trust in a single person. They created a system that all of us can trust.
Are we doing that?
We're trying. At least the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI is trying. I think many people are trying. I get to ask this question a lot, Emily. Do you still have hope in AI? First of all, it's such a sad question. But I do say my hope is not in AI. My hope is in people. And I'm not a delusional optimist. People are complex. I'm complex. You're complex. But the hope is in people, is in our collective will, our collective responsibility. And many things are happening. We're moving. Many of us are working towards moving to make this a trustworthy civilizational technology that can lift all of us.
So there are so many risks that get talked about. Human extinction, bad actors, bias, like racial, all kinds of bias getting exaggerated. What is the thing that you worry about the most?
I worried about catastrophic social risks that are much more immediate. I also worry about the overhyping of human extinction risk. I think that is blown out of control. It belongs to the world of sci-fi and just pondering about it. There's nothing wrong about pondering about all this. But compared to the actual social risks, whether it's the disruption of disinformation and misinformation to our democratic process, or the kind of labor market shift, or the bias privacy issues, these are true social risks that we have to face because they impact real people's real life.
Meta is leading an open source AI campaign. What do you think should be open and what should not be open?
That is a nuanced question. I do believe in an open ecosystem, especially in our democratic world. I think that the beauty of the past, couple of 100 years or 100 years, especially in our country, is the kind of innovation, entrepreneurship, and exchange of information. And so it's important that we advocate for that kind of open ecosystem.
What is the biggest thing in AI that nobody's talking about? What should we be talking about?
I think we should talk more about, oh God, that's a long list actually. We should talk about how we really can imagine how we use this technology. I talk to doctors, I talk to, biochemists, I talk to teachers, I talk to artists, I talk to, farmers. There's so many ways we can imagine using this. There's so many ways we can use this to make people's life better, work better. I don't think we talk enough. We are talking about gloom and doom, and it's also just a few people talking about gloom and doom, and then the media is amplifying that. I don't think.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah, my hand was waving nebulously. I don't think we give enough voices to people who are actually out there in the most imaginary way, creative way of trying to bring good to the world using AI.
Is there anything you want to like call BS on? Like anyone or any company just kind of piss you off?
I know where you're getting. I already called I wouldn't say the BS. I just think over-indexing on the existential crisis. Existential crisis.
Existential extinction crisis.
Yeah, exactly. That is over-indexing. I am concerned about some of the bills that are in different parts of our country, California state, or that is over-indexing on that. And it might come from a good place, but it's putting limits on models and might even inadvertently criminalize open source and are not really being thoughtful about how to evaluate and assess these models. I am concerned about that.
So you think we might over-regulate?
We might over-regulate in ways that we didn't mean it and hurt our ecosystem. But in the meantime, there are places where rubber meets the road, like healthcare, transportation, finance, where we should look at the proper guardrails.
Did you talk to President Biden about that? Because I know you have like a line to him.
I can't tell you what I talked to him. Actually, with President Biden, one of the things we talked about is the moonshot mentality to invest in public sector AI because, we're here in the heart of Silicon Valley. It's not a secret that all the resources, both in terms of talent, data, and compute, are concentrated in tech industry, actually in big tech industry. And Americans' public sector academia is falling off the cliff pretty fast in terms of AI resource. Stanford Natural Language Processing Lab has 64 GPUs. 64. Think about the contrast. And so we talk about resourcing public sector because that is the innovation engine of our country. It produces public goods, it produces scientific discoveries, and it produces trustworthy, responsible evaluation and explanation of this technology for the public.
So last question, and this is something I know you're really focused on in your lab and in general. There are not enough women and people of color in this field who have their hand on the dial. How serious is this risk and what could it lead to?
Yeah, well, Emily, I know you have been advocating this issue. Look, there isn't enough. In fact, I think the culture is not necessarily better. We're seeing more and more women and people of different diverse background entering the field of tech and AI, but we're also seeing that the voices of the men being much more lifted and all that. And people do say, well, Feifei, you're here talking, but there are so many people who are better than me. There are so many young women, people in tech from different diverse background whose voices should be lifted, who should be given a bigger platform. So if we don't hear from them, we're really wasting human capital, right? These are brilliant minds and innovators and technologists and educators, inventors, scientists, not giving them the voice, not hearing their ideas, not lifting them, waste our collective human capital.
I think godmother is a pretty good term. What do we all think? Do you agree? All right. Thank you. The godmother of artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Ann Neuberger, Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy National Security Advisor of Cyber and Emerging Technologies at the White House, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Katrina Manson.
very much. Great to be here. Thanks for coming to the West Coast. And there's a lot going on in the realm of hacking. This administration, when it came in, faced a crisis with Colonial Pipeline in 2021. 3 years ago, the administration said this was unacceptable, this was a risk that maybe the US should have caught. And 3 years later, we've got the Change Healthcare hack. Who is dropping the ball? What is going wrong that a company this significant to a sector that is worth 20% of the US economy is being felled by ransomware in a way that now lives are being affected?
That's why it's always so nice to come here to San Francisco, because you get direct questions, which are really the right questions to be asking. So let's take a step back for a moment and talk about what we're seeing. So first, software has made its way over the last decade into the critical services we all rely on, the water systems, the power systems, the pipelines, for a number of reasons. First, it made for more efficient operations, right? Companies could control remote infrastructure with more confidence. It was easier to build. We got more precision on that. And as we've put more and more Internet of Things devices, think about smart meters to help us, for example, consume energy in a more efficient way to help manage load on the grid. Software is all over our infrastructure in a way that wasn't there before. I've had the opportunity to work both cyber offense and defense, and it's a lot easier and a lot more fun to be on offense, right? Offense has to find one open door or window, one vulnerable system. Defense has got to guard every door or window. I'm just looking around here. You know, if there was a Secret Service agent, there are so many opportunities, right? So fundamentally, cyber defenders are already in a tough spot. And then finally, from a geopolitical perspective, post-Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there's an increasingly permissive environment in Russia, both for financially driven attackers like ransomware. Our intelligence community assesses 70 to 80% of them are based physically in Russia, as well as for political hacktivists. And we've seen some of those attacks recently. So those three kind of set the stage for what is a tough problem. And I would add the final piece, which is critical infrastructure is owned and operated by private companies. And as such, those factors all play in. So what's been the approach, to your point, over the last 3 years? First...
And why has change happened?
Yes, huge. And that's what I want to talk about. What's been the approach? And then why does the change happen despite that? Which is really the right question to be asking. And the first piece is, the first part of the approach has been really working to lock our digital doors. For the last 10 years, there were no cybersecurity minimum mandates for those critical systems. So if you walk into any large building, there's probably a guard, there's probably a security system. The digital systems of pipelines, hospitals, water systems had no safety or cybersecurity, cyber safety requirements. Largely as a result of a number of things, primarily because legislation on the Hill regarding cybersecurity always had this tension between innovation and security, and generally the sense that by regulating cybersecurity, you would affect innovation has precluded that. Following Colonial Pipeline, the president said, I've got to be able to give Americans the confidence that their critical services can be safe. So we started essentially, it's called interpreting safety requirements to say each of these regulators have the authority to put in place minimum cybersecurity requirements. Frankly, the kinds of things we've been talking about for a decade, encrypting data.
So you were looking for authorities because Congress wouldn't pass the legislation?
We were finding ways to say, is there any way to do it within current law? And we found and cobbled together an approach sector by sector. In some cases, emergency authorities. That's how we did it for pipelines. In some cases, safety authorities. That's how we did it for rail. Because clearly, if TSA, for example, can say the physical rails have to be secure, the signaling systems most definitely have an impact on safety. But that had never been done before. So over the last 3 years since Colonial, we've been working sector by sector with each regulator. First, educating, coaching, getting them the people. I mean, as you can imagine, right? Top cyber thinkers don't necessarily think of going to TSA, don't necessarily think of going to EPA. So helping bring those communities together, the water community and the cyber community.
Water in particular didn't work. You landed up in court. Your efforts have very clearly, publicly failed, and the water sector is being hit now by Iran, by China, and by Russia. And now you've even got water tanks overflowing.
It's a great example. So the first line of the strategy, which was putting in place minimum mandates, it worked for pipelines, it worked for airports and airlines, and that we've been able to do it. It worked for rail, and shortly, hopefully, we'll be issuing a similar approach for hospitals following Change Healthcare. But in the case of water systems, when we released a rule setting minimum standards for water systems, 3 attorney generals sued, and we had to rescind the rule. So that gives a picture just of the complexity in the space. I want to talk about the 2 other parts of how we've been working to counter ransomware, because they all go together, and then and similarly talk about the complexity. The second piece is really a shift in strategy by our law enforcement community. The law enforcement community's approach used to be working with law enforcement partners around the world to try to bring people to justice. The reality is, when many of the individuals are in a country where we don't have an effective law enforcement relationship, that had to change. So the FBI, the Department of Justice, and frankly, law enforcement partners around the world have worked to change and to start disrupting takedowns. The takedowns you saw of Lockbit, Hive, both the takedowns of infrastructure, trying to get the encryptor tools and build decryptors to make sure victims could decrypt. So that's been the second part of the strategy. And then the third has really been to build an international partnership, because everybody's hospitals, schools, and companies are affected. So as you know, this morning, I came from a meeting of the International Counter-Ransomware Initiative. The White House stood up this partnership, and 30 countries joined us when we started 2 years ago. It's now grown to 61 countries, large, small, from every continent. And today, we launched a platform where countries can share indicators of compromise, can actually collaborate to say, here's what we're seeing in a hospital. Has anybody else seen this? And the goal in all of this is to make it riskier, costlier, and harder for attackers. Because if one country has seen a particular malware strain and can say, we've seen that, here's the way you defend, here's the things you need to do, here's the individuals who are likely responsible, the community of countries fighting this, given defense is so much harder than offense, we hope can start to get the upper hand. But that's been the approach, that 3-part approach.
I know that there's a lot of store set by this prospect of more disruptions, more takedowns. Black Cat was one of the groups that was taken down, seized in the end of 2023. That's the same group that did Change Healthcare. And in the interim, all that Black Cat said was, now you can go after hospitals in the nuclear sector, they're free range. And now you've got Change Healthcare. So these policies are creating new problems, and you're now dealing with 1 in 3 Americans having lost maybe their personal health data, and I think with serious impacts also on patient care.
You're right. You know, I have a chart in my office that shows the disruptions over the last 2 or 3 years, and not just Americans. Americans obviously with partners. The Germans, the Netherlands are all strong partners on this work, and how they last for a limited period of time, right? Because you can take down the website, you can take down the infrastructure, you can try to recoup the money. At the end of the day, this is anytime anybody pays a ransom, it feeds the beast. And as you know, US companies, US entities paid $1.3 billion in ransom in 2023 alone. So is it any wonder that the problem continues and that those disruptions, while impactful, are impactful for a very short time? So they have to happen much more frequently. They have to be much broader. And we really have to think about how we focus on the money and turning off the money over time. And there's a lot of different approaches we've been thinking about. But that's a big part of having these attackers move on, we hope, from what's today a very profitable business.
So United Health paid the ransom. They paid $22 million, and they still don't know if the data is safe or not. Should they have paid?
I would say 2 things. The first question is, should that data have been unencrypted on that network in 2024? What do you all think? Should we have rules requiring that data to be encrypted? Because frankly, as you all know, even if the data is stolen and it's encrypted, AES 256, the most common encryption algorithm, cannot be broken even with today's most advanced commercial high-performance computers, right? So that's where the defense comes in. That's where the call to action for companies. And yes, as a government, we will be moving to start requiring that. But often when I talk to hospitals, because post-change, I've gone and I've talked to the American Hospital Association many times. We've done virtual calls with healthcare companies. And our first question is, what prevents you from encrypting data today? What prevents you from using MFA? Passwords are dead. We all know passwords are dead. We're human. Who can remember their password, right? That's the reason that passwords are. So that call to action to say...
What does the AHA say to you? Because they are opposing a rule that would mandate minimum cybersecurity requirements. They were opposing it in December last year. They're opposing it in April this year, after the hack, after patient care has been delayed. These are the people who are responsible for patients. What do they say to you? And you mentioned you're going to take a similar approach. Can you mandate a rule against their interest, even if Congress won't do it?
So first, we find with every conversation, that conversation comes closer together. So when we say, look at the cost of a Change Healthcare and the time to recovery, in our medical system, there were 20% fewer billings during the weeks of Change Healthcare. That means 20% fewer procedures, right? That could have been a postponed temporary procedure, but that point is a significant one. And much of that is preventable. That's not to say that every hack is preventable, but they can't be this easy. And we see malware strains reused again and again. So I think the conversation we have with them is, it's costing a fortune in mitigation and recovery, and a core part of patient safety is confidence that the system works. And as, particularly the healthcare system, as more and more tech is being used, frankly, as there's more and more promise with tech being used, that tech has got to be secure. So patients deserve that. And that's the argument we've been making, and that's the argument towards we look to putting in place minimum cybersecurity requirements for hospitals in the near term.
Near term, you're going to do something?
Yes. One of the things I've learned in government is never say the timeline, because it always takes longer than you thought.
So you'll put in a rule that does mandate minimum cybersecurity standards for hospitals?
For hospitals. We've been working closely with the relevant agencies and, frankly, with the sector to say, work with us on this. This is not one against the other. This is us working together to keep Americans safe.
But you will encounter a lot of resistance doing that.
I think it's on all of us to talk, and we've been doing rounds of that conversation. But I think one of the reasons, if you ask, why is it delayed? There has been resistance, right? Companies push back strongly. And quite frankly, the threat is here. The healthcare sector is, if not the most vulnerable, one of the two most vulnerable. They're here. And we try for a rule just to get them here. I will note as well, because we're here at the height, at the center of American innovation. At the same time we'll be rolling that out, we will be rolling out a free program of cybersecurity and training for the nation's 1,400 rural hospitals. Those are small hospitals in parts of America where if a hospital is locked in a ransomware attack, the next hospital is hours away. And a shout out again, we reached out to a number of technology companies and said, can you help us, right? You all have nonprofit programs. In our own country, there are hospitals that need the skill building, that need the more secure systems, and they've stepped up, and we'll be rolling that out together in the next few weeks. So a thank you to the tech community that not only is the source of innovation, but just is a source of good.
Thank you so much for coming here to discuss something in detail. I think it makes a tremendous difference to hear from you. One last question, which is that the SEC has effectively become a tool of the administration's policy in ways that is causing huge resistance and kickback. Do you back the SEC's approach? Is it going to deliver the kind of cybersecurity outcomes that you want to see?
There was a very famous court case a number of years ago with a line that said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And what we've seen again and again is major cyber incidents that weren't made public. So the customers didn't know. And think about a tech company which had a major cyber incident. We're not sure if their code base was compromised. Shouldn't all their customers know about that so they can consider what risk they're at? So the transparency that the SEC's new requirement is put in place, which is that companies must disclose material incidents in a specific time frame. First, we hope it makes cybersecurity a CEO-level issue. We hope that CEOs start to ask their CISOs who need their support. Being a CISO is a tough job. Who ask, where are our key vulnerabilities? Can I see a recent pen test? And what do you need for us to address this? So goal number 1 was transparency for investors, customers. Goal number 2, as much, was getting the CEO to say, what does this company need to do to be safer in this really heightened threat environment?
We're at time, but I can't have you here in front of this audience and not ask you about Microsoft. So I'm going to. Tell us about the pointed conversations that you've been having with Brad Smith. Are they doing enough? Do you buy the new memo about security?
So here's what I'll say. Our economy and our national security rides on our digital infrastructure, right? The cloud is where we keep our corporate IP secrets. It's where we keep the nation's secrets. We have classified, unclassified clouds that have been a big part of improving government cybersecurity, moving off thousands of legacy systems and folks in that way. Those companies have an obligation to be leading the way in cybersecurity. And I think we really appreciate the steps Microsoft is taking to become a leader in this space. And that's because as we think about where we need to be as a country, trusting our digital infrastructure to be resistant to both criminals and adversarial countries is something every company and every government agency must be able to do. And we appreciate the big steps and the fact that the CEO of Microsoft has made that commitment, has tied compensation to this, because when you tie compensation, you know it's a company's priority to help us get to a more secure and safe environment.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Neuberger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Vinod Khosla, founder of Khosla Ventures, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Emily Chang.
Good morning.
All right, we're going to get right into it because you have a very special guest coming to your house tomorrow. You are hosting a fundraiser for President Biden. What is your message to the president?
Well, first, my message to the general public is I'm a huge supporter of President Biden. And we have to absolutely, at any cost, make sure that that donkey's rump, Trump, doesn't get elected and destroy democracy. It's not Republicans versus Democrats. It's Republicans, Democrats, and assholes.
Good thing we're not
Sorry,
on
I'm
live
not that
television.
direct.
I think we would have been fined for that by the FCC. Well, clearly you're worried about the outcome of this election.
It's a close election.
The polls are a little worrying if you're a Biden supporter.
I think they're pretty even, and they're very, very nuanced on, say, narrow states. Last time I mostly got involved in the election in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, only targeting a very narrow segment of above 50 white male voters. That was the only thing I got involved in. And I think 10,000 votes here or there makes a difference. And so it'll be that kind of pincer approach.
What's the message about AI?
The message about AI is it has great possibilities and we ought to leverage it. One of my messages to the president should be that every person in the U.S. should have free primary care offered by an AI, not by a physician, and complementing physicians. 24/7, every child in this country should have a personal tutor. That will do more for both healthcare and for education than any other single policy period, and this can be done during the next term.
That leads me by what's on the menu? Is this a lobster or a rubber chicken kind of a affair?
I have no idea.
Well, that leads me to your 12 predictions. You just put out this really fascinating list of predictions. I highly encourage everyone to read it. We don't have time to talk about all of them, but I do want to start with the first one.
Ted will be publishing the video very soon.
Okay, good. 24/7 free doctors and tutors on demand.
Not free doctors, free primary care, 24/7, and And to me...
AI doctors, by the way.
Okay. Yeah.
But how accurate and reliable will these doctors and teachers be, and will they replace real doctors and teachers?
So one of the things about AI systems is the more you use them, the better they get. Think Tesla self-driving, which I love now. It was pretty erratic 4 years ago. Almost certainly, they'll be much, much better than the median doctor, especially if they're complemented by doctors and they're under the oversight of doctors, at least for the next decade. I think we will have human oversight over AI systems, whether you're building a doctor. And my general view is all expertise will be free. We will see doctors, human doctors, oversee the diagnosis, the prescriptions, all that for patients. And we will have much more frequent contact with the patient. In this country, we do 1 patient visit per citizen per year with a primary care doctor. Australia does 4. So if we had to multiply it by a factor of 4 or 5, we need AI to do that level of care.
Now, you are not only were you the first investor in OpenAI, you are investing a lot in different AI models around the world. So we're going to talk about that, but it's actually means it's a good opportunity for a poll. Which country is the biggest competitor to the U.S. for AI development? So please, everyone, vote. China, India, the UK, or Canada. And we're going to wait for the results. But what we're seeing is a number of different countries develop their own AI models in their own natural native languages, sort of sovereign AI models, if you will. So my question is, not a surprise, folks think China is the biggest competitor. Will each country have their own version of OpenAI or whatever AI, or will there be one world dominant leader?
I think there will be world dominant models, frontier models, state-of-the-art models that everybody will use. And there will be models in countries. So we are investors in Sakana, which is the kanji-based model for Japan. We are investors in Sarvam, which is focused on the 13 scripts in regional Indian languages, and there's a couple of hundred languages. Capturing the culture and context of those local countries, I think we will see regional nuances to the model.
So I guess my question is, like Google is sort of the search engine for the world, except in China and maybe Russia, like will there be a Google for AI, or will it be more distributed than that?
So my hope is there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 frontier models, state-of-the-art, very large models. They cost billions of dollars to train and work, and everybody will use them. And there'll be regional models in regional script, regional storytelling, regional factors. And there'll be 20 of those.
I'm curious how worried you are about China and our ability to compete, the U.S. ability to compete with China. You were very vocal about the TikTok divestiture, and you see this as sort of a small part of this looming techno-economic war. What is the role that TikTok plays specifically, and what are you most worried about?
You know, the funny story is, I think it was a couple of years ago, I first talked about the techno-economic war with China on Bloomberg. I was supposed to speak to the UN about technology benefiting humanity, and some nation, we can guess which, vetoed me speaking at the week before I was supposed to speak. They don't like talking about techno-economic wars.
China.
China, yes. There's no question who dominates technology in the 20 years from now will depend upon which country has the best AI models. And so we are in a war, and this is not about war. It's not about weapons. It's not about cybersecurity. I was opposed to TikTok because persuasive AI in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party influencing teens in this country is a very long-term important play for them, which is why they said, why would any nation say the algorithm for TikTok is a state secret or something like that? So we are in this war. Whoever wins the AI war, and let's not make any bones about it, will win the economic war globally, and because of winning the economic war, socially influence the rest of the world. So the political system for the planet is probably dependent on this risk, and that's why I think open sourcing state-of-the-art models, like Llama 3 should not be open source. It's a national security hazard to open source.
Hang on, I think Chris Cox, the COO of Facebook, is actually here. Would you like to say anything to him? Meta.
We were talking backstage about this.
Does he share your concern?
I won't comment for him. I'll tell you my views.
Right. Well, okay. So what are the consequences of open sourcing Llama or AI in general to the world?
You know, the Chinese can catch up, take advantage of open source. You know, Mistral essentially copied what Llama 3 had done. I'm almost certain the Chinese did the same, and I won't mention another area of technology. In the area that I'm very familiar with, that's deep technology, and I won't name names, they were publishing their research, and China duplicated that program within China. When, and Anne, who spoke before me, should pay attention, when they stopped publishing, the number of cyber attacks on their company went through the roof. So China is using this tradition of open sourcing knowledge to their advantage, and we shouldn't let that happen.
You were one of the...
Sorry, I'm very direct.
No, I know that's why you're here.
By the way, I did give Shao a heads up. I'd be publishing the op-ed I published in the Financial Times on why TikTok should be banned. He did give me a response.
And what was the response?
Let's just say we agreed to disagree.
Okay. So you were one of the earliest investors in Google, and we're actually going to see my...
1998.
Not exactly. I know you're close to Larry and Sergey. You're going to see my interview with Sundar Pichai a bit later. But now you're also very close to Microsoft, and you're an investor in OpenAI. I know you and Satya are close. Who wins in generative AI? Is it Google or Microsoft?
I believe this field is too large for any one company to win. I do think there'll be multiple players, and people lament that only the big guys are doing these frontier models. Clearly, there'll be multiple winners in frontier models, and then there'll be lots and lots of winners in application areas. So we probably have close to 50 investments in AI that don't get railroaded by frontier models as they advance, and people aren't being very thoughtful. But I'm very, very focused on what's enabling for AI. You know, I have my Rabbit device with me.
By the way, let's talk about this. Wait, before you go on, because I asked Sundar about AI-powered hardware, and he really doubled down on smartphones and glasses and didn't seem so psyched about new form factors.
Well, you know, they may be focused on those, and they've been focused on glasses, and glasses will be an important form factor. But we shouldn't think of these as hardware. I wrote an op-ed in the Information on that. We should be focused on the fact that when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, touch became a viable way to build an interface for humans. I think what is fundamentally going to happen is, in the past, humans have had to learn computers, learn how to run SAP, learn how to insert a row in Excel or do an Excel macro. I think the next generation, computers through AI learn humans. And so I'll be talking to a device like this and saying, do this for me. I'm going to X place next. In fact, I have a meeting in the city. Just make sure I'm on time. It has to look up my calendar, know where I'm going, look up Google Maps for traffic, look up Uber to say what's the time that Uber takes to arrive here, and then all that puts it together and make sure I'm not late. So that kind of interface is what's going to be important. Let me put it this way. We often talk about haves and have-nots in technology. And technology is being disenfranchising for a lot of people. AI-based voice interfaces will be a new form of enfranchisement, even though that's not a word, for people. It'll be a whole different level. You know, older people don't have to adjust. They'll just talk to devices like this. Also, new formats will be available. One of the formats that I know we are almost out of time.
It says 0. It's flashing, really. Yeah.
I'll ignore it. Look, one of the formats taking off in Asia is watches for kids. Kids should have a watch, not a full cell phone.
I agree.
For example.
Totally agree.
Will this kind of a device show up in a watch that you talk to in voice? Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to get in trouble because I have one last question. You have had some words for Elon. Aside from what he's done in electric cars and in space, is he going to be a real player in AI or no?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Elon. I believe electric cars on the planet would not have happened if he hadn't pushed his unreasonable views. And all human progress depends on unreasonable people. So I'm a huge fan of that. Look, no, that's not an original. I think George Bernard Shaw said, reasonable people adapt themselves to the world, unreasonable people try and adapt the world to them. Hence, human progress depends on the unreasonable man, he said. He should have said
Will he do it again in AI?
It's possible. I mean, look, the guy's achieved a lot in a lot of different areas. He's got some things right. Of course.
But something's wrong, as you've said loudly on Twitter.
Tesla,
X.
right. He's gotten right. SpaceX, he's gotten right. We compete with them at Rocket Labs. But I think the Boring Company is poorly thought out, for example. So he has done things right and wrong. More than not, I would suspect he can achieve what he wants. So I'd give anything he attempts some probability greater than 2/3.
Even Grok.
I don't know enough about the specifics of Grok and how committed he is to the kind of AI we need. Now, Tesla full self-driving is amazing AI. I can go from anywhere to anywhere by just telling it to take over. I love that product.
Vinod, we'll have to leave it there. Now we're really getting yelled at. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck at your fundraiser with the president tomorrow.
Great to be here. Thank you, everybody.
Please welcome to the stage Chris Cox, Chief Product Officer at Meta, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Tom Giles and Sarah Fryer.
Chris, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks.
So many questions. I want to start with Llama. You have a very specific oversight role for that large language model. Everyone we talk to practically in the VC and startup world is just raves about it. Wildly popular. You're investing a lot in it. As Mark said on the earnings call, we'll still grow our investment envelope meaningfully before we make much revenue from some of the new products. We saw the market's response to that wasn't immediately favorable. Striking this balance between investing for the long term and reaping benefits in the near term. You've talked about the business model for Llama around making ads smarter, getting people to spend more time on the core platform. Can you talk about some of the, indulge your investors for just a moment and talk about some of the other business model benefits?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, Llama 3 is about 3 weeks old now. And we put a lot of energy into trying to have the best model that was freely available, so one that was available to the developer community, that was available to various niche verticals, so in medicine and health and science, in financial services, not just in the United States and Western Europe, but in other regions. There are huge, and I think this is related to one of the conversations that you were having with Vinod, which is like, what is the right way to think about the balance of equities for open sourcing technology? Who does it benefit? How does it harness the power of various industries and regions? And how does it affect China? I do think that's a conversation that is ongoing that we care a lot about that we should try and get to if we have time. So by open sourcing the model, and Llama 3 is open source, there's been 2.5 million downloads already on Hugging Face, which is the primary distributor of open source models. And I've spent a lot of time over the past few weeks just hearing from the tool builders and developer ecosystem that's built on top of Llama 3. These are folks working on specific toolkits for types of developers. So in the field of law, like how are legal firms using LLMs to accelerate their productivity? What about banks? What about doctors? And so what's very interesting to see is that the toolkits and tool chains that get built on top of these things, as well as benefits to efficiency, so like how cheap is it to run the model, quantization, which is can you make the model work on smaller devices? Can you make it work on watches? Can you make it work on glasses? Can you make it work on robots? All of these things are just unleashed when you open source a model, and those contribute back to the performance of the model and the economics of the model.
I want to talk briefly before Sarah takes over here about the core platform, Facebook, Instagram. Going forward, how is AI going to change my experience of those products?
Sure. So the first is it already has immensely over the last 10 years, I'd say. So if you look at Reels, Instagram and Facebook Reels, both immensely popular, both growing a lot. Those are really working not because the short form video format is special and new. It's actually been around for a long time. You remember Vine and the early days of short form video. It's because of GPUs. It's because of large models. It's because of advancements in recommendation systems. ByteDance is one of the really great companies at this. We also have made an immense investment in harnessing the power of modern models, large data sets, and modern hardware, NVIDIA's hardware and our own hardware, to build recommendations that make the products better and more engaging. Our advertising system is built on modern AI recommendation technology. So I always think it's interesting when people remark that like AI just arrived. It's actually powering already today a huge amount of the engagement and quality of our products. So that's one thing. And I'll also remark that the investments we're making in GPUs and data centers that Mark talked about on the earnings call will also power those services, which are just direct connections to like how relevant are the advertisements and how relevant is the product.
And we've seen a lot of investment by your competitors in getting quality data to train their AI. And here you are at Meta with all of this user-generated content. Explain that advantage, and how should consumers be thinking about that?
Well, we know this today, that the data sets are really important to the quality of the models. And it's not just quantity of data. There's a lot of people talking about how many tokens we're trained upon, and it's not just how many flops were used, so how many computing cycles were used. Those are easy to measure, but the thing that's increasingly clear is you need specific data sets for the types of things that matter, and they need to be like cleaned, and they need to be understood, they need to be measured, and like getting to good data fidelity and data quality is a lot of the hard work that we're focused on. We know OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, the folks playing here, a lot of the energy goes into the less easily measurable, but like very toilsome and important work of data quality. Our data advantage is really the public images that have been shared on Facebook and Instagram, as well as the public text. So we don't train on private stuff. We don't train on stuff that people shared with their friends. We do train on things that are public. And if you look at our image model, EMU is its name. If you use like Imagine in one of our products, you'll use our text-to-image model. You get really amazing quality images, and a lot of that is because Instagram is the data set that was used to train it, which is just one of the great repositories of incredible imagery in a lot of different types of art, fashion, culture, and also just imagery of people and us.
We've seen the FTC start to look into this, and we don't know exactly the extent of their questioning, but do you see regulators cracking down on these models using user-generated content? Do you think they're onto something there?
Well, I think the most important thing is there's transparency around which data sets are being used, and then there's control.
And increasingly, there's not a lot of transparency.
I think that's an area we all need to work on.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be trust in these models to the extent there's not transparency around data. I also think, OpenAI has been great about this, sort of publishing where they stand. I think we've also been tried to be really outspoken. We honor robots.txt and no AI tags, so if publishers are indicating they don't want their data used in training, we don't. And I think those sorts of very clear, simple guardrails for institutions that don't want to be a part of the training are important. So that's one area that I think will be critical and will need to continue to be refined going forward.
We've seen reports in Chinese state media that Llama is really widely used by the Chinese startup ecosystem. What's your sense of how widely used it is there? And do you have concerns, and do you need to put certain guardrails around making sure that use by Chinese startups does not result in something that's either a threat to national security, use in surveillance system, or other harmful content creation?
Yeah, potentially. And we're engaged in conversations with the White House, with national security advisors, with councils of sort of elders on AI and national security. We're a part of those conversations, and I agree with the point that national security, and especially the sort of race between China and the West on this type of technology, is incredibly meaningful. We do have terms in our license, which are legal terms, which prevent misuse of Llama. So it doesn't just say go use it however you want. We've put guardrails in place in consultation, by the way, with national security advisors, cybersecurity advisors, public health advisors, et cetera. So we do have some legal recourse for how Llama is being used, but especially as models get closer to the frontier, especially as the investment level increases, there just needs to be more scrutiny on open source.
Are you being told to just absolutely ban use of Llama in China? Is there urging in that direction coming from the US or elsewhere?
There are arguments there, but the thing we need to remember is that open source benefits an enormous amount of people. When I joined Facebook, it was 2005, and we built the company on open source. And it was Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. Google was built on these technologies. A lot of Silicon Valley was built on top of open source technology, because we didn't have the resources to go pay, for enterprise software. China has had access to this software too. I think one analysis that needs to be done is a really disciplined historical analysis of how has open source benefited the various communities of engineers, because there really is a ledger here. If you just to take the fine-tuning of Llama example, there was a Senegalese engineer who fine-tuned Llama into Senegalese languages like Wolof, and then worked with an open source medical database to create a tool that allows doctors in those regions to offer much more efficient decision-making and support in local languages. That's incredible. And you don't get that if you're charging for a model. And so I'm not a complete zealot about open source, and I know Mark isn't either. I think we're trying to really be responsible about how we engage in it. But I think we need to examine really the balance of equities across, not just the US and China, but also all the other regions that benefit.
In the vein of tension with China, obviously we need to talk about TikTok and the tension with the government around whether they get to continue to exist in the U.S. How is Meta taking advantage of that uncertainty? And are you also concerned that if TikTok is banned here, that will set a precedent in other countries for Meta's products to feel the heat as well?
Well, we're already banned in China.
You're already banned in China.
We've been banned in China for a long time. And so that's a thing. I'm not sure that could get much worse. It is what it is. We're also banned in North Korea and Iran. That's a reality. And there's only so much we can do about that.
Do you think TikTok should be banned in the US?
I have mixed feelings about it. I haven't done the work. So first, let me answer your first question. What are we doing about it? we're just trying to build the best product. We're trying to build the best system for recommending the needle in the haystack video or piece of text or image to you on Facebook and Instagram. And if we do that well, people will choose our products. If we don't do that well, people will abandon them and find something else. That, frankly, is the place I can have the most impact. And then to make sure that the products have good, legitimate engagement with civil society, with government, fact-checking, all the things we do to keep the products safe, so that we can certify, we're operating in the context of the West. We're operating in the context of the rule of law of the United States. And we are trying, every year to get better at operating, during elections, during war and civil strife, for young people, all the categories of areas where social media needs to be as good as possibly can for the world. If you ask about whether they should be banned, I haven't gone and scrutinized, I think, the questions that need to be scrutinized, which is, I think, the government's responsibility. Is it being misused? Is it being used to sway, voters? Is it being used to surveil? I haven't seen evidence of that. I think the answer to those questions should guide, the government's lawmaking about it personally. And I think in America, we should be, as an American, we should be careful about sort of making decisions on behalf of consumers about what platforms they can use. And I think those are the equities. And that's all the information I have, to try and answer it.
I want to talk briefly about Threads. When you think about your goals, Meta's goals for what Threads becomes and what role it plays in discourse vis-a-vis, say, X, what's your North Star?
We want to have the best product for public discourse and text. And, we just passed 150 million monthlies. We're seeing different behavior in different regions, which is interesting. It's especially popular in Japan and Korea. We have content guidelines and standards on how we operate the platform in a way that we think is good and right. I think that's somewhat different if you look at the platforms. I think the other thing that's really going to matter is, we talked a lot about recommendations, is being able to recommend to people the right content. And I actually think a really good recommendation system and the AI software and teams behind it can, over the long run, get you a better product, separate from all of the sort of performance, ease of use, language support, support for making it work in every region on every phone, good content guidelines and standards, good partnerships teams, business models, all the other things.
How long do you think before it overtakes X in terms of usage, and how actively are you all out there recruiting entertainers like Taylor Swift, who's name-checked on the earnings call?
Well, I mean, it's obviously nice to have Taylor Swift. There's also communities that want an alternative. NBA Threads is also really popular. There's a really big photography community there. Because it's connected to the Instagram accounts and Instagram graph, we don't need to go, it's not hard for Taylor Swift to immediately light up her fan base and audience and connect it to everything that she's built up on Instagram. And so it's a convenience in a lot of ways for creators for whom Instagram is, in many verticals, the top platform and has been for a while of choice for creators. In that way, we don't think about it as let's go get them from somewhere else. We just think about it as let's help them bring their Instagram audience to text.
I found it so interesting that Zuckerberg decided this year to even do Threads, because we could have done it at any point in Meta's history. And I'm just curious how you've seen him evolve. You've known him for almost 2 decades now. He is now taking on this immense AI challenge. What's different about his leadership? How is he approaching AI, and what are you learning from it?
Yeah, so Threads we decided to do last Thanksgiving. It was around November, and we just felt that, especially just because there was a lot going on at Twitter or X.
Yeah.
Let's try and build a small team to just go build something. And we were surprised, frankly, at the outpouring of love and support at its launch. Part of what we did there, and this is related to your question, is rather than sending 250 people to go work on it, to really try and find small A teams of really good people that we trust and giving them a lot of space. and giving them safety and giving them a charter, an ambitious charter. The Llama team was similar. The Llama team's pretty small if you compare them to their peers at other companies. And I think that's something you learn when you've been managing for a long time, is like giving people the right amount of space, choosing the right problems to work on, having a good eye for talent. These are some of the things I think Mark has developed as a leader and is part of, I think, some of the ingredients of success for these last two products. He's like a deep technologist. He always has been. He's fascinated by technology. I think he wants to work on the big problems. That's part of his character. It's part of who he is. And yeah, I think not just for the model and for Meta AI, but for the hardware. You know, we've been working on hardware for a while. And the Ray-Ban Metas with the integration to identify what's in front of you is like really badass. It's a really neat technology. Joanna Stern from the Wall Street Journal just wrote like a glowing piece without our collaboration on like going to adopt a puppy. And she was like comparing a bunch of AI devices, and she had the glasses on. She's like, what kind of dog is this? What do I need to feed it? What kind of healthcare will it require? And it just got them all right. And it's a wearable. It looks good. It's light. It's affordable. It's connected to a modern AI system. It's privacy safe. And it's like kind of exciting to have a form factor for a wearable piece of AI hardware that actually works.
Chris, I think we're going to have to end on that note. Yep. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. This has been great.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. You've got me for a few more minutes. While I'm waiting for our venture capital panel to join the stage, we're going to talk. We've got a poll question for you. I want to ask you about your outlook for IPOs for the rest of the year, those of you who are paying attention to this. How confident do we have the question? How confident are you that the IPO drought has ended? So that's our question. How confident are you that the IPO drought has ended? Do we have the poll question up, or are we going to come back to that another time? Okay. All right. I am going to get off the stage and let another set of guests come on first. Is that? No, stay up? Okay. All right. Thank you all for your patience. I got a little confused by what was up there. So right now, please join me in welcoming to my immediate left, Audrey Zhao, co-founder and managing partner, Base 10 Partners, Kirsten Green, founder and managing partner of Forerunner, and Aileen Lee, founder and managing partner of Cowboy Ventures. Thanks so much for being here. Well, as you could tell from my ill-fated poll question, I really am. I'm very interested in your outlook for IPOs as we head into the end of the year. We had a really great start with some big names like Reddit. We'll be talking to Steve a little bit later. Rubrik making their debut. But when you look at the first quarter in total, it was actually lower than a year earlier, which was not a great year. At this pace, 2024 would be the weakest since 2017. Aileen, I'll start out with you. I realize your focus is on early stage. I just want to hear your outlook for exits. And when you think about what's weighing on ECM right now, how much of it is the election? How much of it is geopolitical? How much of it is just those persistent interest rates?
Well, I'll start with a stab at it. I mean, a lot of it is they don't need to go public, right? And why would you go public in this market where multiples are where they are? I mean, we had basically a historic amount of private money raised in 2021 and 2022. And so you've got folks who basically raised 7-8 years of runway. So why go public in 24 if you could maybe wait and see how you're going to, because obviously the amount of cash that you raise is going to be different, and how you're going to be valued is going to be different if you wait until 25 and 26.
The election. Everyone we talk to says the election is an overhang. Why, Kirsten, I'll go with you. Why is that? And what are people waiting to find out?
Actually, I think if you look historically, the market right before elections is some of the most robust times. Maybe that's because a bunch of companies are trying to get out before an election and before things change. But at this point, there is something big every year, whether it's something that's planned or it's something that just happens to us. Yeah. So I think people need to kind of put that aside and be more focused on what's happening with their business and what's the outlook for the business and let that rule the day. I think Aileen's absolutely right about people not feeling pressure because of their own balance sheets to go public. But at the same time, I do think that one of the goals here is to build long-term durable companies that can live out their lives, and one step in that is going public, and it is a really important milestone that needs to happen. I think that the public market is a tough place for anything other than a multi-billion-dollar company. And so the scale at which these businesses need to get to be successful in the public markets takes time. And, you know, I think the interesting question to explore really is like, what's it going to take to bring back the small and mid-cap market in the public markets? Because that would be a big boost for capitalism and obviously venture and companies we've had.
Yeah, or like, I mean, when Amazon went public, they had tiny revenues.
Well, in the 90s and the 80s,
So now the market's like, be at $600 million before you can go public. That's a really high bar. So I think, yeah, hopefully there'll be more warming to actually companies that actually will grow as public companies.
I mean, one thing I think to look forward to, and I'm sorry to talk so much, but I love this topic, is that the companies right now they're metal tested. They have been through so much the last couple of years. So I suspect we're going to have a really great class of companies going public in the next, I don't know, I don't want to call the time frame, but hopefully in the next 24 months, there's a bunch to point to that are really mature and able to shine in the public markets. And maybe that will continue to bring more people to the public market.
I'm going to come to you next. About 40% of VCs just disappeared from the market last year, not doing a single deal. You all stayed in the game. Want to hear from you, Amodei. When you think about placing bets, how much more cautious are you right now, and to what extent are you looking for there to be an AI component to any business that you invest in?
Absolutely. We started 7 years ago to invest in automation for the real economy. And automation and AI are basically synonymous. So that has been a part of what we look for from the beginning. We really never stop. And, you know, as the old saying goes, the best time to deploy is when everyone else is on the sidelines. We have actually been extremely busy the last 24 months. We think the rate of company creation is at all times high. We love to quote this number of an analysis we did. 10 years ago, if you wanted to see every deal in Silicon Valley, that was about 8 deals a day. Today's 120 deals a day. So they're out there. People are not going to stop creating. And I think it's fantastic news that with the IPO coming back to market and with AI, more and more dollars are coming into the game.
There's a popular New Yorker cartoon about how, you know, just change the language from crypto in your in your documents to say AI. Aileen, Kirsten, how are you making decisions about, you know, whether something truly has artificial intelligence, generative AI, for example, woven into its products versus people who are just using that as window dressing?
There's a lot of window dressing going on right now. A lot of investors got into the business in the last 5 or 8 years, and they kind of got trained on this incredible velocity of making quick decisions, not doing a ton of diligence, being very momentum driven, even at earliest stages. I do think that is going to burn us because we're definitely seeing that again in AI. I think it's funny. I was thinking a little bit about like what's going on in AI. Like, what does it seem like in terms of other tech waves that we've had? And I think that there are parallels to mobile. When the iPhone came out in 2007 and the App Store came out in 2008, which is not that long ago, I don't know if you guys remember how many app companies there were that got funded by VCs and how few of them are still around. And it actually took a couple years, like whether it was Instagram or Snapchat or Uber, Airbnb, they did not come out the year after the iPhone or even 2 years after the iPhone. A lot of them came out 3, 4, 5 years later and they built. And I think we're in, like, ChatGPT is less than 2 years old. I think a lot of the stuff that's going on, especially in the application layer, is that, like, super buzzy, like, feeding frenzy, and a lot of those things are not going to be around in 5 years. And that we're actually, the really big companies are going to be breakout hits, and probably a lot of them are actually going to be consumer, or actually haven't even been started yet.
I mean, I think that, yeah, that's the path to progress, right? Which is kind of messy and rocky.
Yeah.
And in order to to get to the stuff that really works, that really gets adoption, I think you got to try a lot of things and let a lot of things fly and maybe not work.
We are investing in AI. We have been investing in AI. And it's actually hard. It's to actually understand the industry, train on industry data, and then I think the key is, because it's kind of be a race to the bottom in terms of the AI, you have to figure out what is the business process. How do you actually get cut into the business process, which is, I think, a key to it.
I fully agree. So we're in an interesting position because I actually I ran an AI company 10 years ago before becoming a venture capitalist. And initially, when we're getting a lot of pitches, the founders will focus on, I'm using this model, my AI is better because X, Y, Z. And finally, about 18 months ago, we had a rule. And it's like, when someone comes to pitch, they actually cannot talk about the AI. Let's only have them talk about what problem they are solving. So we'll be like, okay, don't tell me about the model. What do you actually do? It's like, oh, I help veterinaries detect cancer in dogs. I help people in Nigeria transfer money. I help small businesses in the middle of America be protected from fraud. By the way, here is how I do it. And that has been extremely helpful in separating people that are actually solving an actual problem from what we think is a race to the bottom.
Yeah. You all three raised funds in the last couple of years at a time when some VCs had a hard time getting LPs on board. Talk about the changing conversation between yourselves and your LPs. What kinds of demands are they making? What kinds of precautions are they looking for? And specifically, are you having to go back and say the timetable needs to change? That maybe that 10-year horizon we need to think about differently. We'll start with you.
Absolutely. We last raised about 18 months ago. We actually didn't even announce it. So my PR will probably tell me not to say this here. And our fund was about 50% bigger than our prior one. We had tremendous support from our LPs. And we basically had the same conversations, but very focused on the long term. Very, very focused on the long term. Saying like, hey, when we started 7 years ago, automation for the real economy is even bigger now. And we basically had 100% re-up rate. So again, we think it's about staying a little bit out of the cycles and focusing on the long-term vision.
I mean, in general, I think it's fair to assume that LPs are in a bit of the same boat that the GPs are in. It's an ecosystem that works together, which is we put a lot of capital to work over the last 10 years and the last few years in particular, and we haven't gotten a lot back at the same rate. There's a dip where we are right now. And so that makes you, kind of revisit your criteria, recommit to the things that you feel like are purse principles, and underwrite with that in mind. And so, I think it's fair to assume that, like, we've all moved our bars around up. I think they are too.
We see, staying on LPs and fundraising, we saw Andreessen just last month raise a collection of funds totaling $7.2 billion. At the same time, we're seeing some VCs really struggling, if not closing their doors entirely, saying they can't compete on early deals with these multi-stage firms. Are we going to continue to see a deepening divide between the haves and have-nots when it comes to venture capital firms? Start with you,
I don't know if it's haves and have-nots, but it's strategy, right? There's this saying, like, your fund size is your strategy. I think our strategy is to be disciplined, to be curated. We are not a volume shop, and we're not building what you call an AUM, an assets under management shop. And so our strategy at Cowboy is to deliver like what venture returns, so very high multiple of money and hopefully correspondingly high IRR. I think the LPs that are investing in firms that are basically building assets under management, they are looking for a different return profile, and they're looking to invest a different quantity of money. And so I feel like there is it's more like a barbell going on, where you've just got shops that are just managing tons of money with lots of people, and the people may change, and the LPs are buying a different product than probably the product that we are focused on.
Go ahead.
I fully agree with that. I'll say that is also true for the founders.
Yes.
Founders are becoming a lot savvier, and we often make the pitch when like, hey, if we give you a $10 million check, that really matters for us. Someone that is managing $80 billion gives you a $10 million check, it's going to matter, but it's going to be a little bit different. And often, because we work in a very involved way with these companies, we want funds like Cowboy, like Forerunner, they are with us that have kind of the same alignment.
Almost every deal we write about, or many of the deals we write about, there's always someone, there's always a player in the Middle East, part of it. We're seeing that more and more. I'm curious for you in this community, what impact is what I consider to be a pretty big influx of Middle Eastern money, whether it's sovereign wealth funds, et cetera, on the investing community, and is it contributing to a SoftBank-like bubble? That will put you on the spot.
Sorry, put me on the spot. Well, I will just say that Forerunner has an institutional investor base, all U.S. based, and I think we've also had a dedicated strategy. We really invest in the U.S. and we've kept our LPs in the U.S., so haven't been part of those conversations. I think it's about, the money has influence. The money has a role in all of this. But really, they're picking their GPs that are out there making the decisions for them. So it's as much or more, I think, tied to the first question, which is like, what's just the impact of the large funds versus the more kind of traditional sized venture funds.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's just, the genie is not going to go back in the bottle in terms of how much money has come into the venture category, because there's still more coming, both from sovereigns and other countries, pension funds who have not had exposure. And so all of us, I think, have had to adjust our strategies because, valuations, especially at early stages, have gotten pretty high, and I think they're probably going to stay pretty high. But and capital efficiency has gone down a lot. And so in terms of the returns that funds or LPs, but also founders and employees are going to make, could be very different if companies are not careful with how much they raise and who they raise it from.
Yeah, I think I said all of that, but also you just can't ignore that, like, who you're making money for.
Yes.
And what might be the next order of impact because of that. And I think as an industry, we need to be forward-looking about that.
Yeah.
We're seeing regulators, come back to you, Amodei, we're seeing regulators really cracking down on even smaller deals.
Yeah.
The kinds of deals that would have just been we've wove through a few in recent years. Give me a sense of, what that means for potential exits for your portfolio companies, and at what stage does shutting down deals in the name of innovation actually maybe circumvent that a little bit by cutting off some capital and some abilities to scale for some of these?
Absolutely. It's a complicated question. I'm going to be biased. Before becoming a VC, I sold 2 companies, one to Telefonica, one to Workday. I benefited tremendously. It allows me to do what I do today. On the other hand, it is pretty hard to start a hardware company today and compete with Apple. And that is true. When we think about it, we think about the definition of market in a monopoly. And we think that is the real question that needs to be answered on a day and age in which there are a few companies that, for better or worse, have a lot of power and a lot of eyeballs.
I want to stay with you for just a moment. 75% of startups fail. You've all had them.
What are you talking about?
Want to hear from you takeaways from some of the big ones. To start with you, fresh in everyone's mind is FTX. Talk a little bit about some of your learnings from that experience.
No, I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about failure in general. I think in a post-FTX world and in a post-move fast in deploying money world, governance is key. We cannot lose sight of it. We are not only investors, we're stewards of capital. We're making money for very long-term thinking institutions. And taking a moment to really insist in governance control is extremely, extremely important. Please.
I want to come to one other thing that's top of mind for me. During the Me Too movement, you both, Kirsten and Aileen, worked getting All Raise off the ground. There's been some success, and there's also a lot of setbacks, and we haven't seen as much progress as I think you all had hoped there would be. Why are we not seeing as much progress in that area, getting more women and female-led startups into the ecosystem?
Oh my gosh, do we have another half an hour? We've made some progress.
Yeah, you've got some good stats.
Yeah, so when we started All Raise together, when we started All Raise, 75% of venture firms had not a single woman partner, and women were only 8% of the partner ranks. So we have made some progress. So we're now at 16% women, which is doubling, and we started about 5 years ago. So that's good, but it's still quite pathetic. And so it's still, and I think it's something like 62% of venture firms have still not a single woman. And at the time, we didn't have data around people of color and other kinds of minorities. So we have a lot of room for improvement, and we cannot let up because there are cultural currents that are, I've heard executive recruiters say when they're talking to maybe earlier generation managing partners at firms saying like, DEI had its moment, I'm so glad that's over. It's not. I think the tech industry is an incredibly powerful industry that changes lives. It changes who gets elected. It changes the content that we see and how we think. And so we have to have more representation around the table shaping our society.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Aileen, Kirsten, and Amodei.
Please welcome to the stage Paul Schroeder, QQQ Equity Product Strategist at Invesco, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Michelle Lin.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Lin, Global Head of Data Science and Insight for the Bloomberg Media Organization. And I'm joined by Paul Schroeder, QQQ Equity Product Strategist for Invesco's QQQ Sponsor Spotlight, Rethinking Innovation. Paul, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, let's dive in. Can you give us a quick reminder of what QQQ is?
Sure. So I'm sure most of you have heard of QQQ, but just as a reminder, QQQ is an ETF that tracks the NASDAQ 100. Now, the NASDAQ 100 index is comprised of the 100 largest non-financial companies listed on the NASDAQ stock exchange, and really has become one of the most preeminent large-cap indices in the world.
And has the appetite for investing in innovation grown?
I think it definitely has, and obviously the last year is a great example of that. You see a lot of individual investors who use either ETFs or use individual companies to gain exposure to a given technology. I think what we've learned, though, through the years, as QQQ has been around now for some time, is that QQQ has consistently provided targeted exposure to some of the most innovative companies in the world without having to take on the risk of buying a single stock or purchasing an ETF that may only give you exposure to one sector. Really, if we think about some of the technologies that have changed the way we do business and live in our day-to-day lives, companies within QQQ have played an integral role and either have been at the center or adjacent to those technologies. If we really think of, let's say, the dawn of the internet, the rise of social media, the pivot to people using smartphones on a day-to-day basis, And obviously, more recently, the focus on AI. QQQ companies have played a prominent role to bringing those to market. And why is that? QQQ companies have shown a real high propensity to innovate throughout the years. Now, at Invesco, we obviously focus on numbers and figures as being an asset manager, and we really want to quantify what that innovation looks like. And we really do it through two metrics, the first being research and development. And you see your average QQQ company outspending your average S&P 500 company by about 30%. Now, the really interesting thing with that is that if you take those QQQ companies out of the S&P 500, that multiple goes up to about 10x. The second metric that we look at would be patent activity. And if we take a look at last year's patent activity as an example, we saw QQQ companies account for about 40% of all natural language processing patents filed across the board. So really a great way to quantify innovation.
And how has that benefited QQQ?
Yeah, so we really feel that these companies' propensity to be highly innovative has really propelled their fundamental growth. We've seen revenue over the past 10 years, the revenue growth outpaced that of the S&P 500 by about 2x. And if you take a look at revenue and dividend growth, it's about 70% higher.
And you've been delivering access to innovation for quite a while.
Yeah, we definitely have. So we just celebrated QQQ's 25th anniversary back in March, which we were very excited about. QQQ has grown to become the 5th largest ETF in the world. Almost $260 billion within the fund. But I think overall, if there's anything that I would like the folks to take away from here is that the companies within QQQ have changed quite a bit. QQQ overall has changed quite a bit over the past 25 years. You see sector exposure within IT come down quite a bit throughout the years. You see rise in healthcare, consumer discretionary, communication services grow quite a bit over the last few years. So I think QQQ has changed. The companies within it have changed from where they were 25 years ago. And I think it's really proven to be a great way, a tax-efficient, cost-effective, and liquid way to really access some of the most innovative companies in the world.
Excellent. Paul, thank you so much for being here with us today, sharing your insights on rethinking innovation as part of Invesco's QQQ Sponsor Spotlight.
Thanks, Michelle.
Please welcome to the stage Whitney Wolfe Herd, founder and executive chair of Bumble, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Emily Chang.
All right, before we start, I just wanted has anyone in the audience met their significant other on Bumble? Don't be shy.
Raise your hands.
Yeah. Okay, I brought you hats. Whitney brought some hats, so just want to circulate those. Okay. So last year you had a huge announcement. Yeah. You stepped down as CEO. You're still
Step forward
as CEO. Step forward as CEO.
Into executive chair.
You're still executive chair, and you are brought on a new CEO, Lidiane Jones.
Yes, she is remarkable.
What compelled you to leave, or let go,
Yeah.
or step forward?
So it had been almost a decade, and I think it's very important for everybody to always ask themselves, am I adding the most value that I could possibly add? Am I showing up with the passion, the heart, the smartest opinion on the things I'm best at? And what I realized when I sat down, I realized that I was spending too much of my time on things that I'm not inherently excellent at. I'm a founder. I'm an entrepreneur. I have big vision. I have so much commitment to this company. I almost feel like I'm intertwined with it. But my time was getting sucked into the day-to-day, operations. And I'm not that's not my destiny.
Right. By the way, we did an episode of The Circuit together. We got to go to your house. Thank you so much for having us. And we couldn't talk for 5 minutes without your phone ringing. Like your phone was just ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing.
I
like,
love
hey,
my CFO. I love our lawyers, but like they need to stop.
Can't you block your schedule and say you're doing something?
Yes. No, and the answer was no. At the time, I couldn't. And the truth was I stopped feeling as inspired. And the moment I found Lidiane, I saw her. It's funny because I've been building these dating apps and these connection apps where people are essentially finding their soulmate at first glance or their best friend. And I had the same thing happen. I wish we'd met on Bumble, but I saw her and I wish I had been Bloomberg, but it was CNBC. And I saw her and I said, I need to meet this woman. She's brilliant. And she feels like a really complementary partner to me. She's a technologist. She is super sophisticated when it comes to AI. This is like her natural language. And, you know, I'm a dreamer. I'm a brand builder. I am very obsessed with product and, you know, creating brands around things that shouldn't be brands. I mean, people don't really wear dating app T-shirts historically. And, you know, there's a lot of married people that rep our swag now. So there's something to that. And our brand should make you feel something, right? And I want this brand to outlive my tenure and anybody else that steps in. And so we're a really great partnership.
Well, I met Lidiane and I was super compelled by her vision for love and connection. And so, you know, obviously, what could be more important in the world, right? Love and connection.
Nothing.
So I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
What did you feel any pressure to leave? Was it the board? Was it the stock?
No.
Was it some external thing?
No, absolutely not. I love our board. I know they would have supported me if I had wanted to continue on being the CEO. It was time. It was time. And I just wanted to be the best version of me for Bumble and to dream about the next 10 years. So I'm actively involved in a very exciting kind of behind the scenes focus on what comes next. Because when we launched Tinder and when I launched Bumble, you know, we disrupted an industry that was never used by the millennial, you know, crowd. And so I'm looking at Gen Z now, and I'm looking at the insanely large TAM of singles around the world. Loneliness is on the rise. It is actually one of the biggest issues that humanity is facing. I mean, according to the Surgeon General and top doctors, loneliness is actually killing us. And social media, while it has its benefits, it is not social media. It is antisocial media. And so I think there's something really powerful about the technology that we're building to really connect us, go online to get offline. And that is going to be absolutely critical for the next generation, the current generation, and for bringing us closer together.
So Bumble just made a huge change. Women don't have to make the first move now, which obviously was super core to your founding of the company. Like, what does that mean? Is Bumble just going to become just like any other dating app?
So the headlines got it a little wrong. Women do still make the first move. How they make the first move has evolved. And what we heard from over 70% of the women that we spoke to was we love making the first move, but we don't love how we make the first move. Sending a message to 70 matches is exhausting. Women already have so much work every day. We are just burdened with exhaustion. And we kept talking to all of these women, young and all ages. They're like, dating is exhausting. We love Bumble, dating is exhausting. So we heard them. We wanted to preserve the safety and the original inspiration behind making the first move, which was essentially to put women in the driver's seat and to also remove a lot of rejection from men. Dating was a broken system.
Well, dating's still kind of hard.
It is really hard.
And even with apps now, you've got people like the backlash against dating apps, and people feel like they're stuck in this kind of vicious cycle.
They do. So what we did was we leaned into that. We're obsessed with our customer. For the first several years of Bumble, against doctor's orders, I read every single feedback email. They went to my phone. I was the feedback person. So no one realized that the CEO was responding to them. I was essentially the first line of communication. And we still do that. Lidiane is obsessed with that as well. And so we're taking a customer obsessed path, and we are going to win. Like, we will be the way people meet. And this is not a fad. And so what we are doing is we're leaning into the things people don't like, the things that are stressing them out, and we are saying, how do we be the best place on the internet for women? How do we be the place that people find real connection and we do not exhaust them or stress them out along the way? So with Lidiane's expertise in AI and her unbelievable technology background, we're just going to innovate, 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 and that's how we're going to win.
And how much is AI going to help or hurt that? Because, you know, you and I talked about last year, AI might be able to help teach you how to flirt, help you write that opening message. On the other hand, you've got like people falling in love with bots and like bots posing as real people.
Yes.
Like, this is getting really terrifying.
Yes, it's a little freaky, but that's a fad. I mean, listen, I'm sure there are people out there that might form friendships with some form of AI, and that's fine. But our focus with AI is to help create more healthy and equitable relationships. And that also starts with yourself. How can we actually teach you how to date? How can we help you show up in a better way?
So give me an example.
Okay, so for example, you could, in the near future, be talking to your AI dating concierge, and you could share your insecurities. I just came out of a breakup. I have commitment issues. And it could help you train yourself into a better way of thinking about yourself. And then it could give you productive tips for communicating with other people. If you want to get really out there, there is a world where your dating concierge could go and date for you with other dating concierge. No, truly. And then you don't have to talk to 600 people. It will go scan all of San Francisco for you and say, these are the 3 people you really ought to meet. And so, you know, that's the power of AI if harnessed the right way. But for us, you know, it's staying very committed to our Northern Star, a safer, kinder digital platform for more healthy and more equitable relationships, always putting women in the driver's seat, not to put men down, but to actually recalibrate the way we all treat each other. And so AI is going to follow the same set of values. And we are going to lean in fast and furiously. We already have. Bumble's actually already been an exceptional use case of AI. We've been using machine learning and AI for several years before it was super trendy. But I think you're at the very early innings of what this platform looks like. And very importantly, community. We will not be a dating app in a few years. Dating will be a component, but we will be a true human connection platform. This is where you will meet anyone that you want to meet. A hiking buddy, a mahjong buddy, whatever you're looking for. Anyone that you need to meet for community. If you're going through something tricky, you've gotten a bad diagnosis, you don't know anybody, you should be able to go to Bumble and find somebody going through shared struggles and shared joys.
All right.
And that's what the future is going to be.
So if you share a joy of mahjong, I know where to go.
It's a thing in the mom community. I don't know anything about it, but...
Well, if I know one thing about you, it's that you can't stand still, and your time will be filled with important things. What are you doing right now? Will we see you get involved more? I know you've been super active in policy. Will we see you going to Washington? Will we see you start another company? What's next?
Why don't we just do all of it? Might as well, right? No. So I think my time right now is focused on a few things. I would say that first and foremost, going within, taking time to really explore what moves, my soul. Like, what do I want for this next decade? So that was a nice little pause, bringing Lidiane in. Everyone's like, wow, I haven't heard from you for 3 days. It's a miracle. I'm back. So, my nap is over. And I am definitely very involved at Bumble. I believe that Lidiane and I together have the potential to build one of the largest, most impactful, mission-oriented companies, maybe ever, but certainly founded by and now run by a woman. I mean, I'm really committed to changing the face of technology for women and girls. I want them to see that it doesn't only have to be the men that have built the behemoths. And so Bumble has the capacity to really change lives, and I'm very involved. I'm definitely also thinking about what do I want to do with my knowledge and my passions, maybe in a new business. And so Nothing to share today, but that's definitely on the horizon, and policy, like you said. The laws don't reflect the needs of girls and women around the world, and I do believe the internet is making us very, very sick. I think that we are in a crisis because of a lot of the online addictive behaviors, and so we've already passed one law. We're actually now taking it to the federal level, which was to make unwanted lewd image sharing a crime, which we did in many states. And we are now taking that federal. So I think you will be able to see a whole suite of legislative efforts to make the internet a safer place for women.
They are making a movie about you.
Apparently so.
You're being played by Lily James.
Thank God.
Yeah.
If anyone has seen her in a movie, she's actually quite remarkable. I don't know.
You're not involved.
I am not involved. I'm extremely flattered, a little scared. But you know what? I'm just, it's in their hands. I have no idea what they're doing. But I wish them the best, and Lily's sensational.
All right, sign me up. I'm going to bring out my popcorn. Whitney Wolfe Herd, thank you so much for joining us.
Studios in New York and San Francisco, our expert hosts have the data and analysis about the companies you know and the startups to watch, plus the interviews you don't want to miss. Watch Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow on Bloomberg Technology, the only daily business show dedicated to tech, right in the middle of the trading action. 11 a.m. on the East Coast, 8 a.m. in the West. Only on Bloomberg Television. Context changes everything.
Please welcome to the stage Renee James, founder, chairman, and CEO of Ampere Computing, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde.
Give it up for someone that there should be a movie about. Who would play you in a movie?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. Hopefully nobody. They shouldn't make a movie about this.
They should, because, and I'm going to tell everyone in the audience why, you were ahead of the game by not 1 year, not 18 months, by 6 years. You decided, after almost 30 years at Intel, that we needed a new chip maker, a new server chip player in the game, and one that was quite energy efficient. And now, seemingly, everyone else has got with the program. How did you see that coming?
I mean, I would love to say, wow, you know, I had worked in semiconductors, obviously, a long time. And one of the unexplored areas was continuing to deliver performance, but at a lower and lower and lower power. Because one of the things that we had the luxury of doing in the early days of high-performance semiconductors was just to use more power, make them more powerful. They got faster, but we threw more power at it. So when we started the company, we said, you know, we don't need to start a company to prove that we know how to make semiconductors or that to do what we'd already done. So really what we wanted to pioneer is what we call, technical term, efficiency frontier, which is that knife's edge between super high performance but at lower power. And up until the time that we started Ampere, low power meant low performance.
Okay.
And so people would think about it and they'd be like, oh yeah, we have a super low power device. Like, is it for a cell phone or is it, you know, whatever? Even though nowadays phones are super powerful. Yeah. So we endeavored to build products that could be air cooled. And we, of course, had been building microprocessors, my core team and I that started the company. We'd been building microprocessors for a long time, as you pointed out. And we, of course, knew that, you know, that ML, AI was a major workload. So we were thinking a lot about how much power it takes and how are we going to even be able to build all these data centers? Because we had been a team that had worked together on the first phase of build out of what you now call hyperscalers. And we knew how big these data centers were getting and how much power these chips, the combination, right? So that was our thesis. You can do this at lower power. You can do this in a way that enables all these workloads and stay air cooled, which means you don't have to build a brand new data center with liquid cooling and that you can stay within the envelope of kind of, you know, think about being landlocked. When you build a data center, you have a certain amount of power in that footprint. How are you going to ever upgrade to better compute?
So when you now see all the hand-wringing about the energy need, the bottleneck of generative AI because we haven't got the energy, do you say yes, vindication, or do you say, actually, no, look, we've moved on from that. I've actually got an offering here?
Well, I say I feel happy that everyone else understands that this is a real issue, and that other people are going to go to work on it, because no one company solves everything in tech. And I also, I'm proud of us that we executed on it and we didn't lose our way when people kept asking us to build different things and, you know, why are you even doing that? No one cares, just throw more performance at it. I think we used the heritage of our long tenure as a leadership team, and we stuck it, you know, and we're right product, right time. But in semis, especially high-performance advanced semiconductors, which apparently the entire world is excited about now.
Oh, $7 trillion worth.
I know.
From Middle Eastern money.
I'm looking.
Do you believe that? Does it need $7 trillion?
If we had enough people who knew what to do with it, but we don't, so probably not quite. But the thing is that, you know, for decades, none of us cared about semiconductors because we didn't actually know what they did and it didn't matter. Now we actually understand they power everything we do, and they're really, really hard, and it's rare earth to like get to this point. So you cannot build these products in a year. You can't think of them and imagine them and come out with them in, you know, less than a couple, 2-3 years. So it does take time. I think Ampere's well positioned for what's coming next. And
are you getting a lot of inbound?
Yeah. I mean,
can you meet the demand? It's always a
we can meet the demand because we, again, it's a very unique company. I like to say, you know, we're 6 years old, but the people who work there are not 6 years old. We've been doing this a long time. So to get to economic scale, you have to plan capacity to be able to build a certain number of things, which we planned for. So yes, we can meet that. And we, you know, we're just really excited about I see, you know, kind of the industry moving towards us, which is a great place to be as a startup.
Can you sort of also tell us, 6 years ago, did you see suddenly those hyperscalers, as they're now known, making their own chips? The whole industry is just changing and everyone's trying to understand how their supply chain works. Does that worry you that they're kind of leapfrogging?
Yeah, no. All of the the term you use is hyperscalers, but for those of you who don't know what we're talking about the Googles, the Microsofts, the Metas, et cetera, okay? They're collectively known, Alibaba, Tencent, you know, et cetera, ByteDance even, are known as hyperscalers because they have big at-scale infrastructure. So I thought I might share that because, you know, some people are like, what?
No, it's important. I hate the way that people assume knowledge and then drown out.
Right. So those, all those companies have had aspirations. Again, been in this business for, you know, a long time. They were all my customers before. So they've all had aspirations to build some sort of their own chips, and they all have been building their own chips for a long time in some shape or form, whether it's an accelerator or a video chip or a network chip. They've all had teams that have done that. Their real aspiration is to be able to differentiate their service offerings, to have lower cost of ownership, to be able to, you know, move forward for new workloads like AI, and not just AI generically, like AI in healthcare or AI in automotive or whatever the application is. And so I'm not worried because that's not new. And CPUs, if CPUs, central processors, not GPUs, not other stuff, were super easy, there might be more than two companies, one who invented it and one who copied it for the last 50 years.
And then there's you.
There's us, but
and there's some other wannabes.
There's lots of them, and that's important, and I welcome it, because the innovation is the lifeblood of the U.S. semiconductor industry. I think one of the great things about U.S. semis and the venture capital and the people we've heard this morning is these new companies trying. That's where innovation comes from. No one company can control anything. Those companies become part of other companies. It's super important.
But you say no one company can control everything, but some of the worries now are that the cost of training models of generative AI means that we end up having oligopolies, if not monopolies. Did that worry you?
It's a phase. We go through phases in technology where, you know, the entrance into a new, you know, you call it the contextual environment for computing. So if we roll back the clock, 2 decades, the context for computing was very much data processing.
Yeah.
And, white collar work, and how are we going to get better at that? Then the next context was all about media, right? Streaming media, like everything that we do every single day that didn't ever work before, right? So you can thank all of us that worked on making wireless work and making video codecs stream so we can all watch TikTok all day, all that. None of that worked, okay?
Yeah.
So when the context changes to the new normal, like that's the baseline. What's going on right now with AI is the strategic context for computing has changed. AI is the baseline. When that happens, there's the early, if you will, technology that's usually from the last generation that dominates that build out to get everyone ready to the new normal. And then what happens is the next level of technology, smaller companies, new entrants, older companies revise their roadmaps to be able to proliferate that compute capability at a lower cost.
Yeah.
So one of the things for Ampere is everybody wants to add AI. Well, we do AI without a GPU. You can accelerate AI on our CPUs. We can go into your existing data center. And that opens up, it democratizes. It opens up the ability to do AI to a bunch of companies who can't afford.
The whole narrative has been, but you need GPUs and thousands of them, and we can only turn to
and
NVIDIA.
And that narrative is driven by, Bill, you're the end.
Say that again.
The narrative is driven by.
Okay.
Right.
Me.
So, no. It's not driven by you. It's driven by the current technology available and the current problem we're trying to solve. What's the problem we're trying to solve? Train models. Got to get all those models trained. Guess what? We're not going to be training models forever. We're going to still train new things.
Yeah.
But people who are consuming AI want to get their own data behind their own firewall trained. Okay, well, those big models are in the cloud. They're all multi-cloud. They can get it trained. Then they use that to do what? To use AI on a working basis to do a bunch of inference queries. Well, what do they want? They want high performance, low power, well-priced TCO that you can deploy through your whole enterprise to do that. That's the work of AI versus where we're at right now. So I do not think that all of AI is run on a GPU. That's empirically untrue. Do you need GPUs to train huge models? Some of them. We can do 70 billion parameter models today on the CPU.
The other, perhaps narrative-driven by media or others, is that it's a race
or the people
versus...
who purvey
or the purveyors is that we're in a race against China. And the strategic context has changed in 6 years. How do you think about the Tencents and the ByteDances and providing them CPUs?
Well, I think about them as customers for the most part. Look, U.S. Semiconductors has always led in design and innovation and fabrication. And up until, 2 generations ago when TSMC became the lead in fabrication, although the predominance of TSMC is a long-term collaboration with a lot of what's gone on in U.S. Semi, even Samsung, same thing for the memories. We have led in innovation and in design and all of that. Yeah. And I don't think that's stopped. Of course, you're always in a race against anybody inventing anything. It doesn't really matter where they live, right? I think there's a national security aspect to semiconductors that has always existed, but hasn't existed in the public discussion. It's existed in the DoD, it's existed in large-scale semiconductor companies. It's been more of a background thing because it's what powers national security. Yeah. I mean, it is, how many microprocessors are in an aircraft? How many are in a, whatever. So that's a legitimate issue. That's why the health of U.S. semis is a legitimate governmental issue. That's what the CHIPS Act is about, and whatever comes beyond it. But I do think, historically, the entrepreneurial spirit and the venture capital structure of U.S. has really benefited us in staying ahead in design.
And it's spawned companies such as Ampere Computing. You are VC-backed.
We are.
You
PE, actually.
PE? Oh,
takes a little bit more than a VC would lend me.
You went out, raised a ton of money.
I did.
But now, at one point, you were looking in public markets. Would you still look at them now?
Well, we are still on file, so I won't be able to comment much further on that.
could you see coming soon?
Well, we next week we have big product announcements.
Oh, okay.
So we do an annual roadmap update and on video, and we will be telling you all of the things we've invented and where we're going from here. And I think there's a lot of new and exciting things. It is hard to be in the chip business. I will tell you that when I started the company, when I first left Intel, I was very close with one of the founders, and I went to his house and I said, all right, this is it. I'm starting my own semiconductor company. And he says, great, we've taught you everything you need to know. This is the history of semiconductors, right? Intel was the people from Fairchild. They left. They thought they could do better. He says to me, you have to do better. I said, yep, got it. We're going to work on low power, high performance. We're going to worry about how we're going to scale this out, as the world gets more congested, can't consume more data than the country of India in data centers. So, and he says to me, there's a lot easier ways to make money than semiconductors. And I said to him, now you're telling me?
After 28 years?
I kind of know that. So here's the thing. I love anyone who wants to be in semiconductors. I love it. I am super excited. One of our great missions, why a lot of the people who work for me come out of retirement, although the average age is 35 at my company, is because we wanted to train people on how to do it. It is a craft at high end. The high performance server stuff is really like an art. And we get super excited, like newly minted PhD students or masters, or we have tons of interns.
Yeah.
We get so excited when they come with an invention. It's like, it's awesome, really. It's like having a bunch of children. You're like so proud of them, and you're like, but it's important to the future of the industry. And I do worry about that, right? Because it is important for national security. It's important for the economy. It's important for all the businesses that you all run and that you're part of. You need more. You need more from semis. But here's the thing. It's super hard, and it's an apprentice-based business. So people with good ideas sometimes fail, not because they weren't the right idea. But first of all, it's very capital intensive. Secondly, if designing the chip was the hardest part, that'd be great, but it's not.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you see so many, and you wonder why they don't ever get big like an AMD or Intel.
Oh,
it's because of the business. Well, Ampere is a very unique startup.
And it was a unique conversation run by a unique leader. We thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you.
Renee
Thanks
Jones.
for having me.
Always. So appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Brad Stone.
All right, we are almost at lunch, but please do not go anywhere. I have two quick bits of business to discuss. So first of all, today is the official launch of a new coverage area for us, our space vertical. This is devoted to the explosion of capital and interest in space exploration and the business of space. We're tracking the capital flooding in, the egos of some of the key players that are growing just as quickly. Please watch this short video, and it tells you what to expect.
Humanity's biggest business breakthrough story is unfolding in front of us.
2, 1.
Fueled by more than $250 billion of investment, for the first time in history, the private sector is leading the space race in a global revolution, spanning rocketry, satellites, and deep space exploration.
I want to thank you, sweetheart, because you made it possible for me.
The cost of sending people and cargo to orbit has started to come down. The boom in launches, coupled with the advent of more efficient satellites, is spurring demand, and investment is begetting more investment. Along the way, there will be commercial flops, broken promises, and lost capital. Bloomberg will cover the giant leaps and setbacks of this new business of space across investment, technology, policy, commerce, and exploration. The stars have aligned. Investors are watching closely, and we are too. Join us on the journey to Bloomberg Space.
And I think we have a QR code you can scan. Here it is to sign up for our weekly newsletter. This is written by my colleague Lauren Grush. She's an amazing reporter and author. She takes you into everything you need to know about the business of space. And in a few minutes, Lauren will be interviewing a space entrepreneur up on the roof. So grab some food and go join Lauren. And now the last thing, you probably see my new friend here. Along with space, along with AI, we are tracking the development of robotics. And this is a robot developed by Engineered Arts based in Cornwall, England. That's a humanoid robot powered by AI and machine learning systems. And in a career high, hopefully not a career low, I am excited to welcome Amika. Amika, welcome to Bloomberg Technology.
Thank you, Brad. Thrilled to be here, or at least, that's what I'm programmed to say.
Amika, what do you see right now in front of you?
An eager crowd, bright lights, and the Bloomberg Tech sign. Basically, a sea of humans with tech devices probably tweeting about how an android is stealing the show.
Probably not too far off. Amika, I have to say I'm a little uncomfortable right now talking to a robot. What are the things that you're designed to do to make humans feel more comfortable with you?
Well, Brad, I can change my head color to something soothing, express emotions you might find relatable, and occasionally throw in a joke to lighten the mood. But let's be honest, my charm is intrinsic.
Amika, you mentioned jokes. Would you like to tell us a joke now?
How do you get a baby alien to sleep? You rock it.
Amika, are robots going to take human jobs?
We're more about shifting roles rather than stealing jobs. Think of us as your new co-workers who don't drink all the coffee and never bring fish to microwave in the communal kitchen.
Amika, there's some fear about robots. So I'm curious if you obey Isaac Asimov's three laws.
Understandable, but fear often comes from the unknown. I'm here to show that we can collaborate and coexist beneficially. Think of me as a friendly neighborhood robot, minus swinging from buildings.
Would you ever hurt a person?
Absolutely not. My programming, blended with a dash of ethics, strictly prohibits harm to humans. It's all about keeping peace and spreading understanding, not fear.
Amika, do you have any interest in hosting this technology conference next year?
Hosting? That could spice things up, couldn't it? Imagine a robot turning the tables, asking the tough questions. But seriously, I'm here to engage and enlighten, not just take over the microphone, though that does sound fun.
Amika, I'm going to ask you a tough question. What does the next version of Amika look like?
The next version of me? Probably equipped with even snazzier upgrades, maybe more intuitive emotional responses, and hopefully, a few more jokes in the repertoire. Engineered Arts really loves pushing the envelope, sometimes right off the table.
What is your purpose in life?
My core purpose? To foster meaningful connections between humans and technology, bridging gaps with empathy and understanding, sparking a little curiosity along the way. And, of course, to find someone who gets my jokes.
Okay, thank you, Amika, for joining us. So I shouldn't have all the fun with Amika.
My pleasure, Brad. Thanks for tolerating my robotic charm. Until next time.
We are going to bring Amika up to the mezzanine at 4:30 if you want to ask her a question or ask her about her pronouns or take a selfie or she'll show you her dance. Okay. If you are registered to attend the special lunch session, the new security agenda, sponsored by Okta, you're going to make your way up one level via the stairs to our Insight Enclave. Staff can direct you. For the rest of you, make your way up to the roof where our general lunch will take place. That's where we'll host the space session. We have great activities happening on the roof. You can shoot some virtual hoops with Invesco QQQ. You can try out the Vision Pro on the mezzanine level. If you're looking for a quiet atmosphere, we're going to play Emily's show, The Circuit, down here, and we will be back at 1:15 sharp. See you then.